Choices by MesserMoon, Chapter 16. It's nice out. Late spring, the sun is set, the breeze cool but not cold. James closes his eyes for a minute and breathes in, letting the night fill his lungs, stars just starting to wink themselves into view. What about that one? He's on his back in the Quidditch stands, pointing up at the sky. Which one? Regulus asks beside him. The group there, to the left of the moon. Oh, to the left of the moon. Well, that clears it right up, Regulus says dryly, and James elbows him. Those ones there, you prat, the group that looks like a turtle. Regulus lets out a juvenile snort that makes something warm pool in James's stomach. He turns his head to look at the other boy, who's also lying on his back. I don't know what's so funny. It does look like a turtle, James says, shuffling just close enough that his words ghost over Regulus's neck. He grins as he sees the other boy shiver, eyes fluttering closed. I promise you, it doesn't, Regulus says, a little breathlessly, and James likes that so much that he leans forward and plants a kiss just behind his ear, staying there for a few seconds before pulling back to look at the sky again. Oh, it totally does. Look, right there. He uses his finger to connect the dots. That's the shell, and that's the neck, and that's the head. Regulus squints up at the sky. Oh, Jesus Christ. Officius? You think Officius is a turtle? You really are an uncultured heathen, aren't you? Pfft, sorry I wasn't named after a bloody constellation. Regulus isn't a constellation. It's a star. Thank you very much. If anything, that's more embarrassing. Regulus glares at him. You know, I don't know where you get off mocking my name when you're the one named after the gay king. Bit on the nose, don't you think? Overkill, even. James blinks, looking over at him. Wait, really? Regulus rolls his eyes. You don't know astronomy or history? Tell me, why do people think you're so smart again? Was there really a gay king of England? Regulus lets out an exasperated sigh, but James can tell that he's enjoying this. James I of England and the 5th of Scotland had a string of young, very pretty male lovers. No shit, Regulus snorts. Eloquent as always, James. Please, call me your majesty. I am definitely not going to do that. James grins wickedly. Aw, come on, Reg. He tickles his side. Don't, James. He's already giggling. Come here, pretty male lover. He pulls a squirming Regulus on top of him, Regulus pitching forward, hands landing on either side of James's face. Their eyes meet and hold. The world no bigger than this moment between them. This breath. This look. James reaches his hand up, fingers running through Regulus's hair, swooping down to cup his face. Will you bow to me, Regulus? He asks cheekily. Regulus turns and kisses the inside of his palm. I could, but I'd rather get on my knees for you. James almost chokes on his next inhale, Regulus smiling as he drops his head and brings their mouths together. So much of James's life is a mess right now, but this has felt so right recently. This has been all good days, and James is grateful, because he's not sure how he'd be managing without it. Regulus trails kisses across his jaw, his throat, James's hands sliding up his shirt. Fuck, your hands are cold, Regulus murmurs against his skin. Need you to warm them up. Regulus snorts. You're terrible at this. Please, James says as Regulus pulls back, hovering above him, knees on either side of James's hips. I'm endearing. You're something, all right. James makes an impatient noise at the back of his throat, sitting up so Regulus is essentially in his lap. So much teasing, not enough kissing. Regulus laughs into his mouth as James's hand goes to the back of his head and brings them together again. James is still surprised by how warm Regulus is, how soft. He goes pliant in James's arms, leaning into the kisses, making small, happy noises when James bites his lower lip. We're going to have to stop. Regulus is breathless, forehead pressed against James's, or I won't be able to concentrate tomorrow. James's gut twists at the mention of tomorrow, but he tries to push those feelings aside. Ah, you've discovered my brilliant strategy, James says, his fingers playing with the hair at the nape of Regulus's neck. Brilliant strategy? He asks skeptically. Distract the other team's seeker with memories of my sexual prowess. Regulus leans his head back and laughs, the noise echoing in the empty stadium. Oh, sure, you laugh now, James goes on, holding back his own smile. But have you ever tried flying a broom with a heart on? Bloody difficult. Regulus buries his face in James's shoulder, still shaking. James, please, stop. I can't breathe. Which, really, Regulus ought to know is the surest way to get James to keep talking. Can you imagine the commentary? He clears his throat, putting on a voice. This is shaping up to be an especially hard game today, folks, specifically for Slytherin Seeker. Wonder who he'll be slithering into later. You're a child. Regulus's words are muffled as he buries his face further into James's shoulder. James laughs, about to continue when another thought occurs to him. Oh my god, can you imagine McGonagall's face? I bet she'd shut the whole bloody game down, give you detention for violating the sanctity of Quidditch or something. Regulus shudders, sitting up so that James can see him again. Could there be a better boner killer than McGonagall's face? Oi! James pinches him, causing the other boy to let out an incredibly adorable squeak. I'll not have you slandering Minnie in front of me. Oh my god. Regulus pinches him back. Have you had fantasies about Professor McGonagall? James only snorts. Personally, no. Mommy issues are not my thing. There's a brief beat of silence before Regulus's eyes go wide. No, he gasps, James biting his lip to hold back a smirk. No, he never. Tell me he hasn't. James only shrugs. Listen, it's not my place to judge what your brother does or doesn't fantasize about. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Regulus brings his hands up to cover his eyes, laughing as he shakes his head. I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he told you. Hey, the dorm is a safe space. Those words do something annoying to the pit of his stomach. It's only a joke, but there was a time where he would have meant it. He doesn't know what their dorm is now, but he certainly wouldn't call it safe. Well, your strategy has been neutralized now, because there's no way I'm getting a boner for the rest of my life with that image in my head. Shame that. James nuzzles at Regulus's neck, kissing it a few times before pulling back again. Guess we'll just have to win the old-fashioned way. Regulus blinks, cheeks flushed from James's mouth. James has learned that necks are particular weaknesses of Reg's. Breathing, touching, kissing, it all brings that slightly glazed look to his eyes. Old-fashioned way? James nods, grinning even though he can feel the return of those nagging feelings in his gut. Bribery and blackmail. Regulus arches his brow. Very Slytherin of you. Desperate times. He really does try to keep his voice light, playful, but tomorrow is the final Quidditch match of the season. Gryffindor versus Slytherin. And James can't fly. Well, he can fly, technically. He can get on his broom and get into the air, but then it's just... because Sirius isn't there. And it shouldn't matter. Their second-string beater is perfectly adequate, but James and Sirius have always been on the team together, since they were 12. And now, flying without him feels like flying without his bloody right arm. Hey, Regulus says, tugging lightly on the collar of James's shirt to get his attention. Fuck him, okay? You're going to be brilliant. James huffs. Not if I play anything like I have been. He runs a hand through his hair, leaning back. It's just, this is supposed to be my thing, you know? I'm supposed to be good at this. You are good, Regulus says vehemently. It's honestly annoying how good you are. Apparently not on my own. You're not on your own. You have a whole team behind you. James closes his eyes, dislodging his glasses as he massages the bridge of his nose. I know, it doesn't feel like it. It's like there's no one out there who can read me anymore, who has faith in me. I know it doesn't actually make a difference. He was a beater. It's not like I relied on him to pass me the quaffle, but it just made me a better player, knowing I was out there with someone who believed in me 100%, no matter what stunt I pulled. There's a pause, the cool air causing the forest to rustle behind them. You can't rely on other people's belief in you, Regulus says eventually. James opens his eyes and finds Regulus's stare trained on him. I know. Don't think, when you're up there, about faces or names. He can hear the competitiveness in Regulus's voice, the same way he sees it in his body when he plays. The need to win. They're just players. Pieces on a chessboard. That's it. Focus on the game. Yes, sir. James considers saluting, but decides against it. Regulus still rolls his eyes. I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to be personal, James repeats, pushing himself up so their faces are close again. The Regulus Black motto. Okay, if you're just going to mock me, I'm not going to bother trying to help you. James bites back a smile at Regulus's pouty expression, brushing their noses together. You help me. You always help. He kisses him, softly, slowly. All kissing is not the same. That's something he's learned with Regulus. having never kissed anyone else enough to understand the differences. It's one of his favorite pastimes, figuring out all the different ways to open the other boy's mouth, and all the different ways to taste him. "You are good, James," Regulus says when they break apart. "I mean that." James arches his brow. "Better than you?" Regulus scoffs, although his eyes are all play. "You wish." James laughs, and Regulus quickly brings their mouths back together. "So loud," he says into the kiss, pushing James onto his back again. The older boy pulls at his lower lip. "Guess you'll just have to shut me up then." Turns out, James is not at all good. In fact, he is very, very bad, playing what might be the worst game of his entire life. And if the pinched look on Frank's face is anything to go by, he thinks so too. "Okay," the older boy says, running a hand over his sweaty face. The game is running long, so Hooch called for a break, which is why the Gryffindor team is currently gathered in the locker room, looking ragged and hopeless. "Listen, I know things aren't good, but the game isn't over yet, all right?" Mary snorts, leaning up against the lockers, arms crossed over her chest. Frank sends her a sharp look, but honestly, James doesn't blame her. The snitch hasn't been caught, but Slytherin is currently leading up 140-80. All 8 goals scored by Mary, of course, because for some reason, James can't seem to keep his hands on the fucking ball. "Beaters, I need you to be more aggressive. Take more shots. Nothing illegal, but the chasers are getting too comfortable out there. McDonald, good job on those goals. Keep it up. Marlene?" I know, I swear I'm looking." Marlene is sitting with her elbows on her knees, head in her hands, sweat bleeding through her uniform. Frank just nods. "Sometimes it's like that. Keep your eyes peeled and stick close to Black. He moves, you move." "Yeah, 'cause that worked so well for Morrow," Mary says dryly. "You got anything helpful to add, McDonald?" Mary doesn't balk, sending Frank's glare right back at him. "Yeah, actually. Why doesn't James help me the fuck out here?" James grimaces, hand tightening around his broom handle. "Back off, Mary," Alice says, hand going to James's arm and giving it a squeeze. James has no idea what Frank has told her about Sirius, but he's grateful for the two of them either way. "I'm just saying." "This is a team sport," Frank interrupts. "The fate of this game isn't up to one of us. If we're doing poorly, that's on everyone in the room." Mary rolls her eyes. "Oh, come on. There's clearly one person who is monumentally fucking up more than the rest of us." "Merlin, Mary, shut up," Alice snaps. "Oi," Marlene's head pops up. "Don't talk to her like that." "Then tell her to stop being such a cow." Mary laughs, pushing off the lockers and stepping forward. "You know what, Alice? Just because you're screwing the captain doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want." "Okay, that's enough." Frank tries to interject, but neither of the girls is paying attention to him. Alice smiles in a way that is not remotely pleasant. "Oh, you really don't want to go there." She tries to step forward too, but James grabs hold of her arm and pulls her back. "Leave it, Alice," he says quietly. She looks back at him, face flushed with indignation. Honestly, he's not sure which of them is scarier, Mary or Alice, but he's pretty sure he couldn't take either of them in a fight. "Look, James, I'm not trying to be a bitch," Mary says bluntly, hands on her hips. "But come on, I'm right, no? You're playing like garbage. I just don't see what's good to do, acting like you aren't." "Merlin, Mary," Marlene mutters under her breath. "What? Did I miss something? Potter's a big boy, he can take it." Alice is still pulling against James's grip, ready to fight. "McDonald." "You're right," James interrupts Frank. "I am playing like garbage." "Thank you," Mary sighs. "So stop fumbling the quaffle and just pass it to me every time you get it, okay?" James snorts, finding himself surprisingly appreciative of Mary's no-bullshit attitude. "You got it, McDonald." "Great. Now maybe we can close that fucking gap." She looks around the room again. "Everyone okay with that?" There's a beat of silence. "Fine," Frank says, running a hand over his face. "But James, you get a shot, you take it, okay? Don't second-guess yourself." Frank is hoping that he'll wake up, that he'll suddenly be able to fly like there isn't a chunk of him missing out there. Hell, he's been hoping the same thing, trying to do what Regulus told him, to think of them as faceless players, pieces on a board, to not look for Sirius, but he just can't quite manage it. "Sure, Frank." Before anyone else can speak, there's a ringing of a magically magnified voice in their ears. "Teams back on the pitch. I repeat, the teams are now to return to the pitch." Frank looks back at them, eyes running over each of their haggard, sweaty faces. "We are a bloody good team, whatever happens out there, and I'm proud of each and every one of you." James feels his chest go tight. This is Frank's last chance to win the cup, and he's fucking it up. "You got it, Daddy Frank." Marlene stretches, getting back on her feet. As they start down the tunnel back toward the field, James realizes, for the first time, maybe in his entire life, he doesn't want to get on his broom. The second half of the game is not going any better. James's passes are sloppy, his aim off, and he keeps flinching every time he sees a goddamn bludger. Luckily, the rest of the team is doing a bit less shit. Slytherin hasn't scored any more goals, and Mary has managed to get in too. At least if they lose now, it'll be respectable, which is not a thought James has ever had during a Quidditch match before. Usually, he's more of a fight to the bitter end kind of guy, but everything feels wrong this game. The team, him, nothing is meshing well, and he just wants to go back to his room and wash the whole thing out of his skin. Mary makes an unsuccessful attempt at the Slytherin goal, and the keeper chucks the quaffle well across the pitch, overshooting his mark, so that there's no one on the receiving end. Normally, James would revel in this, an easy steal, but the way the game is going, the Slytherins will have it out of his hands in no time. Still, he has to try, doesn't he? He's almost got it when another set of hands come out of nowhere, snatching the quaffle before he can reach it. Sorry, Professor. What the heck is going on here? The Slytherin Seeker has just taken possession of the quaffle? Booms the commentator's voice across the field. James feels just as stunned as everyone else, staring at the dark-haired boy hovering on the broom in front of him. Regulus. But Regulus doesn't let him finish, gray eyes sharp. You're throwing a temper tantrum. James blinks. What? You're mad that he's not here, so you're throwing a temper tantrum. Stop it. You're better than this. I am not. Just because it isn't how you pictured it doesn't mean it's broken, and I'm tired of watching you give up. His eyes scan behind James, watching as the other players get closer. What the hell, Black? That's one of the Slytherins. Zabini, maybe? Stop harassing my chaser. That's Frank. This is highly irregular, folks. I quite honestly have no idea what's going on. Weird strategy on the Slytherins' part. Regulus' eyes stop moving for a moment, locking in on James. I believe in you, he says quietly. The wind pushes against James, rocking him like a boat. What? You said you missed having someone out here who believes in you, who has faith in you. He puts weight in his words, so they don't float away, so that James can hear him. I have faith in you. And then he's gone, flying past James and sending the quaffle careening over his head toward one of the Slytherin chasers. James blinks, trying to get his bearings. I have faith in you. Those words bounce around in his head. Those words set fires in his chest. And then, slowly, James feels himself smile. Potter, Frank shouts as James turns his broom around. Get your head in the fucking game. And he does. The rest of the game is brilliant. Hard flying, fast gameplays. James is out of breath and beaming by the time it's done. Gryffindor is leading 200 to 160 when Regulus catches the snitch. It's work for James to hide his smile at the sight. Reg with the golden ball held over his head, the stands going wild. They've lost, and it sucks, really. But fuck, it feels like the first time he's been able to really fly in weeks. I'm sorry, Frank, Marlene says, even before she's off her broom. The team landing on the field all sweaty and red-faced. It was a long game, and the sun is starting to dip below the horizon, the evening rolling in. Frank shakes his head. Don't be. You played beautifully. You all did. It's loud and chaotic, the Slytherins chanting in the stands, a few of them running onto the field with Madam Hooch and Professor Slughorn. Green and silver scarves are thrown onto the pitch. What the fuck did Black say to you, and do I need to fight him? Alice asks as she comes up behind James. He laughs. Nah, it was nothing. He feels almost guilty about dismissing Reg like that. Dismissing what he did. I have faith in you. He stopped a whole bloody Quidditch match in front of the entire school for James. I knew all you needed was a little antagonism. Mary winks at him as she walks toward the locker room, squirting water into her mouth. James laughs. You trying to say that takedown at halftime was all for my benefit? She turns around to face him, walking backwards. Anything for you, James, baby. But there's something not quite right. Cold and sharp. It takes James by surprise, but before he can answer, Alice beats him to it. You're lucky you didn't get socked in the face, MacDonald. There's a playfulness to her voice as they start following after Mary. As if you dare, Pruitt. Bad idea to bet against me. Just ask Marlene. She's right, Marlene admits, throwing her broom over her shoulder. Mar! What? It is. James smiles at the three girls, hanging back so he can walk with Frank. All right, Potter? Frank asks, dragging his feet like he's reluctant to leave the pitch. James nods as they slowly come to a stop near the edge of the field, Frank looking out at it all with a wistful expression on his face. James watches for a moment before clearing his throat, foot kicking nervously at the ground. Listen, I reckon I owe you an apology. Frank looks over at him, eyebrow raised. I let you down out there. There's a pause, in which James feels Frank's eyes on him but can't quite bring himself to meet them. You know, the older boy says eventually, 2 years ago? Hell, last year. If Mary had said the things she said to you today, you'd have lost it on her. There'd have been a bloody duel in my locker room. But the way you handled yourself today, he shoots James a proud smile. You've always been a good player, James. No doubt about it. But I was never convinced you could actually lead the team. Not until today. James blinks, brain suddenly going a mile a minute. Are you making me captain? Frank smirks, just out of the corner of his mouth. But you didn't hear it from me, so do try to look surprised when the badge comes in the mail, yeah? James nearly chokes on all the words that are trying to force their way out of his mouth. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. You earned it. I'm excited to come back next year and see what you do with them. You've got a good core here, but it'll be nice to get some fresh blood on the field. James only nods, feeling a little stunned. For some reason, he had always assumed that the captaincy would go to Marlene, her being the most patient and reasonable of the lot of them. Beside him, Frank takes in a deep breath, eyes scanning over the field one last time. I got into the Aura program, he says eventually. James feels something tug in his gut. So it's official then. No more Quidditch. Frank nods slowly. It's official. It shouldn't bother James as much as it does. The Auras is the right choice, the noble choice, but he can't shake the feeling that it's unfair. Alice too? He finds himself asking. Yup. James bites down on his lower lip. Be careful, yeah? His chest squeezes. Auras always feel so big and scary and untouchable. Like you could throw them into anything and they would survive. Not like Frank and Alice. They're just kids. Just his friends. Frank drags his eyes away from the pitch and back to James. You too. There's more to say. There almost always is, but James has no idea what, and before he can figure it out, Madam Hooch is shouting at him across the field. Potter, here, now. James squints in her direction. There are still scattered groups of reveling Slytherins on the pitch, though the stadium has sufficiently emptied, only 1 or 2 stragglers still left in the stands. Frank lets out a low whistle. She sounds pissed. Yeah, James grimaces. Think she's figured out I've been stealing snitches all year? Frank laughs, patting James on the shoulder as he turns down the hallway behind them and starts making his way inside. Merlin help you if she has. That, James thinks, is wholly unhelpful. Walking toward Madam Hooch, he realizes that he's not the only one who's been summoned, a spike of anxiety cutting through him that has nothing to do with stolen snitches as he stops awkwardly across from Regulus. Mr. Black has something to say to you. Hooch crosses her arms over her chest, eyes bouncing between the two boys, her gaze particularly harsh when it falls on Regulus. Okay? James shifts his weight between his feet, feeling thoroughly uncomfortable. He can't quite look at Regulus, not this close. Not with Madam Hooch watching him. I'm sorry for my unsportsmanlike behavior, Regulus says flatly. James blinks. What? Your sincerity is truly inspiring, Mr. Black. I'll be taking 50 points from Slytherin. I have never seen such vicious behavior on my pitch, and I won't tolerate it again. Understood? No, wait, Madam Hooch, but Regulus cuts him off, voice sharp. I honestly was only making an observation. It's hardly my fault that he was playing like a drunken baboon. James chokes, halfway between laughter and indignation. A drunken baboon? He arches his brow at Regulus, but the younger boy's face is made of stone. Yes, thank you, Mr. Black, Madam Hooch says coldly. Next time, I'll disqualify you. Yes, ma'am, he says dryly. Hooch gives him one last look before turning to James, hand clapping his shoulder as she walks off. Excellent turnaround in the second half, Potter. Really brilliant flying. Thanks? He watches her walk away, brow knitting in confusion. Regulus, why? Supply room. Regulus whispers, quiet, direct, past the locker rooms, on the left. And then he turns on his heel, heading back toward the remaining teammates, leaving James feeling as though he's just been hit with a stunning spell. He watches Regulus's back for a moment before following what he's assuming are instructions. Frank is no longer at the entrance of the stadium. The hallway clears as James makes his way down the hall, finding the supply room on the left, just like Regulus said. He doesn't have his wand on him, so the only light is from the small, high window on the far wall, illuminating rows of well-used brooms and mismatched Quidditch gear. The ceiling and floor are gray, the room smelling distinctly of sweat and leather. James runs a hand through his damp hair, wondering exactly what he's meant to be doing. When the door opens behind him, he turns and finds Regulus slipping through. Hey, he says, when Regulus doesn't speak. the two of them standing awkwardly in front of one another. Regulus nods. He looks tense, and the fact that James has no idea why is wigging him out a little. You can't tell people what I said to you during the game. You realize that, right? James blinks. Oh, of course. This is a PR meeting. So what do I tell him? Regulus waves his hand in the air dismissively, and for some reason that irks James. That I was taunting you? The specifics aren't important, though it's probably best if you choose one story and stick to it. You want me to tell everyone that you were being an asshole? Yes? James frowns, unsure why it bothers him so much. I don't want to do that. You have to. It was a dumb thing for me to do in the first place. I wasn't... Regulus shakes his head, looking off to the side for a moment before his gaze returns to James. Look, it's what everyone's going to think anyway, so just go along with it, okay? James thinks about Alice and knows that Regulus is right. Well, they shouldn't. The way that Hooch was treating you out there, that wasn't fair. You don't have to be the bad guy. I don't want people to think, and what's the alternative? Neither of them have stepped any closer, the space between them poking holes in James's lungs. Huh? Because people are going to ask, and if you tell them the truth, then they'll know that we're... He cuts himself off. They've said they love each other, but they haven't said much else. Like what they are, what they're doing, what it means. Would that be so bad? James asks. He sees Regulus's eyes widen, but not with shock, with anger. Are you joking right now? No. Regulus stares at him for a minute, a look of complete disbelief washing over his face. You're being ridiculous. I don't think so. He takes a step forward and Regulus instantly steps back, causing them both to freeze. James does his best to ignore the tightening in his chest. What are you so afraid of, Reg? For a second, the expressionless mask cracks and something much more powerful than anger or irritation slips through. And then it's gone. You have no idea. I can't be... He starts then stops, shaking his head. And anyway, it doesn't matter. I told you before this started. This? James repeats, a new edge to his voice. What's this, Reg? What are we doing, huh? What am I to you, exactly? He can see Regulus's chest rising and falling like he's still playing the game, still trying to outmaneuver an opponent. Don't start, James, he says finally. I told you this had to be a secret. You agreed. That last word is ground out of him, almost desperate sounding. I'm not the one who flew up to you in the middle of a Quidditch match, he shoots back, petulantly. Regulus pinches the bridge of his nose. All I am asking, his voice carefully level, is that you confirm their biases. And I'm telling you that I don't want to go around bashing you to everyone. Oh, get over yourself, he drops his hand. It's not as though you've never done it before. My brother, I'm sure, has given you plenty of opportunities to practice. Now it's James's turn to take a step back. That attack taking him by surprise, in no small part because it's true. Eventually, Regulus sighs, breaking the new silence that's grown up around them. James, please, I'm asking you. I made a mistake, a miscalculation. I wasn't thinking. I need you to do this for me. It's not fair, really. Not with the desperation in his voice, his words. He needs him. And really, that's all James has ever wanted. To be needed. Okay, he says quietly. Fine, if that's what you want. Regulus nods curtly. It's what I want. Another beat of silence. I should go. Regulus's voice is clipped, gray eyes somewhere distant, somewhere not on James. Reg? He stops him with his hand on the door. The younger boy looks back over his shoulder, but doesn't turn around. It meant something to me, what you did out there, so just... There's an unnecessary strain in his voice, and he coughs, trying to make himself sound normal. Just don't call it a mistake, okay? Something uncomfortable and heavy grows in James's chest as he waits for an answer, enduring a silence that stretches on too long. Eventually, Regulus nods. Okay. He turns back to the door but doesn't open it, hands still tightly gripping the handle. After several seconds, he sighs, like he's giving up, losing the fight. When he turns back around, his eyes are softer than before. Just stay still, all right? Don't touch me. Surprised, James nods, clasping his hands behind his back in a way that Regulus can see, the younger boy approaching him slowly. Regulus's curls are long enough now to be messy after the game, his his cheeks still flushed, making his eyes stand out, the gray, bright and intense, trained on James's face. When they come toe-to-toe, Regulus pauses for a moment, looking at James intently, before rising up on the balls of his feet to press a quick kiss to his lips. The touch is soft, and when he pulls away, both of them are breathing heavy. "I got distracted watching you," Regulus says quietly, and James can tell that it costs him something to give up that truth. "Usually I can tune out everything when I'm flying. That's why I love it so much, but you... All that time I was supposed to be looking for the snitch, and I couldn't take my eyes off of you." James feels his breath hitch. He knows what this is. An apology. An olive branch. James almost tells Regulus that it isn't necessary, except that he doesn't want Regulus to move, to hide behind his walls again. They aren't touching, James's hand still behind his back, but they're close. And there's something about the soft tones of Regulus's voice, low and gravelly, that sends shocks and electricity through him. "You take it on too easily," James says eventually, when he's certain he'll be able to keep his voice under control. Regulus sends him a questioning look, so he continues. "The role of the villain. Like you think you deserve it. Like you're trying to atone for something. Your family's guilt isn't your own, Regulus. You don't have to bear it. You aren't them." Something complicated is happening in the other boy's eyes, and James wishes he knew what it was. "Sometimes," his voice gets even quieter, eyes closing, "I think I was born with blood on my hands." James wants so desperately to reach out, to pull him close, to hold him, but he doesn't, because Regulus doesn't want that, because he trusts James not to. "You've been saving me," he says instead, the next best thing. If he can't wrap him in his arms, he'll wrap him in his words. "These past few weeks, everything that's been going on was serious. If it weren't for you, I'd be sunk." He takes in a deep breath, leaning closer but still not touching. It's Regulus who ends up bringing their foreheads together. "You're not bad, Regulus." The other boy lets out a dry laugh. "Maybe." There are fault lines in his voice, ready to shake him apart. "But I don't think I'm good, either." "Reg," James whispers, his voice breaking. He has no idea what they've been telling him at Grimmauld Place, but he knows it fucked him up, makes him think he's something he isn't. It hurts, he realizes, to love someone who can't love themselves, like watching a work of art set itself on fire. They stay like that, frozen, pressed together. James closes his eyes and listens to Regulus breathe, surprised by how comforting it is. He doesn't know how much time passes before Regulus steps back. "You're my person," he says suddenly, like it's a struggle. Talking always is for him. James blinks. "What?" "You wanted to know what you are to me," Regulus explains, flush high in his cheeks. "You're my person. You're mine." James feels a smile tug at his mouth, something fluttering in his stomach. "Okay, Reg," he says warmly. "Yeah, I'm yours. You're mine, too." The other boy nods, exhaling, like he'd been worried. James can't imagine why. He's completely gone on the kid. He thought he made it clear. "I won't be able to get away tonight," Regulus goes on awkwardly. "I figured." "Tomorrow?" James nods. "Tomorrow." This time, Regulus doesn't pause at the door. The locker room is empty by the time James gets there. He doesn't mind. He feels a little raw. He needs time to pull himself together before talking to anyone. It isn't that it's bad, exactly. Just intense. But then, it always is with Reg. He thinks of all the art, paintings and music and plays, about love, lines and lines dedicated to trying to get this feeling out, metaphors and similes, blended colors and golden frames, trying to make it into something that can be spoken and seen and touched. James thinks he gets it now, at least a little bit. The desperate desire to take the swelling inside his chest and say, "Look, it's real." "James!" It is clear the minute he walks through the portrait hole in the common room that the Gryffindor team has spent the time since he last saw them getting drunk. Well, the team and company. Peter and Remus are there, along with Lily. His eyes meet hers briefly before looking away. They still haven't spoken since that day on the lawn, and James isn't sure he's up for any more confrontation today. You lot certainly seem to be having a good time, he smiles, though, quite honestly, he'd like nothing more than to go upstairs and sleep for several hours. Warm morning, Mary says, holding up a half-empty bottle of something James can't recognize, but assumes is alcoholic. Ah, he says, dropping his bag and sitting next to Remus. Sorry about the game. Remus presses into his side just enough to be comforting before pulling away. Thanks. Someone hands him a bottle and he takes it without thinking, though he doesn't really feel like drinking. To Frank. Mary hoists her drink up into the air, all brown curls and red lips and devilish eyes. The most anal-retentive captain at Hogwarts. There's a few laughs and hears, everyone raising their own glasses and taking the drink. The alcohol burns on its way down James's throat. He really needs to get something to eat. He's not sure when the last time he had food was. This morning? To Mary, Frank returns, Alice between his legs, leaning back against his chest. The biggest pain in my ass. Mary throws her head back and laughs as the rest of them raise their glasses again. More burning liquid pooling in James's stomach. He doesn't know why he feels so off. I'd have thought that title would go to James, Remus says playfully. Mary snorts. Please, Frank and James are basically the same person. Not quite the same, I don't think, Frank says dryly. For starters, I'm pretty sure I've never had detention. Jesus, really? James asks. Blimey, what have you been doing the last 7 years? Sleeping? Alice giggles. Some of us are just smart enough not to get caught. Smart enough or not bold enough? James asks with a grin. All right, settle down, children, Mary says from her perch on the arm of the sofa, lording over the rest of them on the floor. I meant when it comes to Quidditch. They're both big nerds. I believe the term you're looking for is top-tier athletes, James says primly. I'll drink to that, Frank sends James a smile, tipping his bottle to him. I still can't believe I missed that bloody snitch. Marlene is sitting at Mary's feet, knees pulled up, head in her hands, and at least 2 empty drinks beside her. Oh, are you still on that? Mary says, looking down at her friend with extreme disinterest. Really, darling, it's done. Move on. But Marlene only makes an aggravated noise. We could have won if I'd just been a little faster. McKinnon. Frank leans around Alice to put his hand on Marlene's arm. It's okay. You're a brilliant seeker. You'll get him next year, yeah? Marlene scrunches her nose. But you won't be here, she says thickly. Okay. Mary reaches down and takes the drink right out of her hand. That's enough for you, you bloody lightweight. Babe, look at me, Alice says, leaning forward. Marlene turns her big eyes on the older girl, her big red eyes. Geez, James whispers to Remus. How long were you guys drinking before I got here? Remus snorts. Not long. She's just been pounding him back. It was impressive, honestly. We do not. Alice's voice cuts across the room. She's taken hold of Marlene's hand and is looking at her very intently. Win Quidditch games for boys. Marlene sniffles, nodding her head. Right. Yeah. But that only lasts for about a minute before another frustrated groan rips out of her, and she pulls away from Alice, collapsing onto her back. I can't believe I didn't see it. There. Mary nudges her with her foot in what James thinks is supposed to be a consoling gesture. Stupid Regulus Black. Marlene mumbles, arm now thrown over her face. I'll drink to that, Alice says, a general mumbling of agreement sweeping around the circle. For a second, James thinks he feels Remus go stiff beside him, but he can't figure out why. Maybe because Regulus makes him think of Sirius? James doesn't know, and he's too tired to figure it out, downing the rest of his bottle before looking for a new one. I still can't believe that little twerp had the audacity to fuck with you like that, Alice says, and James can hear the anger in her voice. She's always been too much of a mama bear for her own good. What did he say, anyway? It takes a second before James realizes the question is directed at him, and that every set of eyes in the circle is now turned in his direction. Of course, he knew that Regulus had been right, that conversations would inevitably end up here, but somehow he still feels unprepared. Eventually, James shrugs, a motion he hopes looks more natural than it feels. Don't remember, wasn't really paying attention. He takes a deep pull of his drink. Mary arches her brow. That bad, huh? I didn't say that. But it's bad enough that you don't want to tell us what it was, Peter pipes up, unhelpfully. I didn't say that either. Maybe we should talk about something else. Remus looks around hopefully. And not for the first time, James thanks the gods for Remus Bloody Lupin. Wait, now I'm intrigued. Alice leans forward in Frank's lap, a look in her eyes that says she's not about to let this go.
What did he say, James? Because whatever it was, it got you playing like a rock star. James looks at her for a long minute before leaning forward himself. Who says my playing has anything to do with him? Remember, Alice, we do not win Quidditch games for boys. She cackles, clinking her glass against his as she falls back against Frank's chest. Touché? Was it about Lily? Everyone looks up at Mary, who is now considering James thoughtfully. Don't bring me into this, says Lily, who up until this point has been uncharacteristically quiet. She's sitting against the side of the armchair, knees bent and pulled up, bottle hanging between them. James looks at her and then away. No, he says bluntly, but of course, Mary can't let it go. If anything, his flat denial seems to egg her on, that sharp look in her eyes that he noticed on the field. The one that doesn't feel like joking. I bet it was. Why would Black interrupt a Quidditch game just to rib James about Lily? Frank asks skeptically, and while James appreciates the sentiment, he really doesn't think the audience participation is going to help the situation. Mary shrugs. It's a well-known weakness. I told you he didn't. Then what did he say? She pushes. James rolls his eyes. I don't know. Something about how shit I am. Does it matter? Oh, wow, Alice says suddenly, the spark back in her eyes, making James's stomach squirm. You're lying. I am not. Guys, I really think we should change the subject. Remus tries again. Frank, Alice, when do you guys start Auror training? But it's too late. Makes sense. He wouldn't want to tell us if he said something horrible about her, Mary goes on. I told you to leave me out of this, Lily says again. And I told you that he didn't say shit about Lily, James grumbles, somehow finishing off his second drink. He reaches for another. Maybe you should slow down, Remus says quietly. If I'm going to have to deal with her, he motions jerkily in Mary's direction as he grabs another bottle. I'm going to need more alcohol. What was it, Potter? Come on, I'll never sleep if I don't know. It couldn't have been that bad, could it? Alice asks, intrigued. Regulus has always seemed pretty harmless to me. I don't know about that, Remus says quietly, which surprises James. What? He turns to his friend. What do you mean? Remus looks thoroughly uncomfortable, like he hadn't meant to let that slip out. Nothing. Never mind. I am with Lupin, Mary says. The quiet ones are always the ones with the sharpest teeth. Oh, piss off, would you? James says, now starting to get angry. But why not just tell us what he said? Peter asks. Pete. Remus shoots him a silencing look. Had to be some Death Eater nonsense, Mary goes on, eyes intently on James, clearly enjoying how uncomfortable this is making him. Let me guess. He called her a mudblood? He's not Snape, James snaps back, and the room suddenly goes quiet. A moment passing where they all seem to be holding their breath. Well, fuck you both, Lily says finally, getting to her feet and storming out of the common room. Lily, Marlene calls after her, but the redhead doesn't turn around. Jesus, Mary, Marlene hisses when the portrait closes behind her. Was that necessary? Mary shrugs, though James doesn't quite believe she feels as indifferent about it as she's making it seem. I didn't know she was still so touchy about it. Marlene lets out a deep sigh before collapsing onto her back again. I should go check on her, Alice says eventually, patting Frank on the leg as she starts to get to her feet. No. James takes a mouthful of his drink before setting it down and getting up himself. I'll go. No one looks particularly confident about that plan. James, are you sure you... I said it. Already moving toward the door. I'll go. At first he worries he won't be able to find her. He doesn't have the map, and, truth be told, he has no idea where Lily Evans goes when she's upset. Luckily, the corridors are mostly empty, and he only has to wander around for a few minutes before he spots a redhead sitting in one of the windows. Go away, please, she says wearily, not even bothering to check who it is. James, predictably, does not go away. Instead, he leans against the wall next to the window. Look, I'm sorry for bringing him up, okay? Mary was just being a bitch. Yes, I know. She's angry. That surprises James, knocking him off course for a second. Angry? Lily sighs. She worked really hard to be as good as she is at Quidditch. James blinks, feeling lost. Okay, I get that. Losing sucks. Lily laughs dryly, shaking her head. She isn't angry about losing. Then what is she... This was going to be her game, Lily says, with an air of someone who is having to explain something very simple to someone very, very stupid. For once, she was the star. She was scoring the goals, and you were playing like shit. Yeah, I know. Lily rolls her eyes, but doesn't look away from the window. Then, all of a sudden, you, I don't know, woke up, stole the show the way you do. Now all anyone can talk about is your bloody comeback, and all that work she did the first half of the game is forgotten. So she's pissed. But she's also Mary, so she can't just shout about it like the rest of us. She has to pretend she doesn't care, that she's above it all. God forbid she actually care about something. It would ruin her reputation. Okay. He fidgets against the wall, unsure of what to do with any of this information, though he supposes it does help explain why Mary's been having a go at him all bloody day. I guess I don't really see how any of that is my fault. Lily sighs, forehead leaning against the glass. It isn't. It's just infuriating. James blinks, looking down at her, long red hair braided down her back, green eyes reflected in the glass. I'm infuriating? He asks. It's all infuriating. What is? She shakes her head, finally sitting up straight and looking at him properly, eyes sharp. All of it. We come here at such a disadvantage. We've never seen magic before, never even knew it existed, and then suddenly we're thrown into these classes with people like you who have been there their whole lives, and it's like we're always playing catch-up. James tries to keep up with her. When you say we, you mean Muggleborns, yes, or mudbloods, I guess, the amount that people are throwing that word around these days, it might as well be a bloody nickname. James flinches, but Lily doesn't give him a chance to respond. Mary has to work twice as hard as you do to be on that team. The first time she saw a broom, flew on one, she was 11, by which time I'm sure you'd been flying as long as you'd been walking, which James had to admit is not an inaccurate statement. She can't practice when she goes home for the summer, or Christmas. Hell, she doesn't even have her own broom because she can't bloody afford it. The words pour out of Lily, and James realizes that they've been building in her for quite some time. None of that is your fault. I understand. You were born a pureblood. You were born wealthy. You can't help it. But sometimes it's fucking aggravating, especially when you walk around acting like we're all equals because we aren't, because we never will be. No one will ever look at you and decide that they can't be seen with you anymore because of your fucking blood. Her voice breaks on that last word, and she looks away again, leaving James shaken. It feels like a long time that they stay like that, not speaking or moving, neither of them even bothering to make eye contact. Eventually, he sits down beside her, elbows on his knees, hands clasped between them. It scares me, he says finally. What does? Lily asks. He exhales. How easy it is for me to hurt people because I can't always see it. I never thought about how much longer I've been flying than Mary, just because of who I am. We don't use magic before we turn 11, before we come here, so I never saw it as an advantage, but you're right. Of course, I might not have been using it, but I was around it. I understood it. He swallows, running a hand over his face. He can feel Lily's eyes on him, but he doesn't look at her, staring intently at the wall across from him. Sirius hurt Remus, he says finally, voice straining. I know, Lily says, though James is well aware that she can't possibly. At least, not really. I'm so fucking mad at him, you know? But part of me is terrified, too, because Sirius and I, we're more similar than we are different. And I don't believe for a second that he meant it, that he meant to hurt Remus, but he did. Because he didn't see it. See how this is all different for Remus, more fragile. And I'm scared that I could make that mistake, too. That I make it all the time, without even realizing. James still hasn't figured out whether it makes it harder or easier to forgive Sirius, being certain that he would never consciously hurt Remus. Does intent matter when the wounds you've made are so big? Eventually, he hears Lily groan, shifting so that they can sit side by side, backs to the window. It's really irritating how difficult you make it to stay angry with you. James snorts. Do you want to be angry with me? Lily pulled her mouth to the side, thinking. Sometimes, maybe. Simpler that way, isn't it? I guess. A beat of silence passes before James manages to speak again. I'm not sorry about punching Snape, he says, pushing on even when he feels Lily stiffen beside him. I don't like him. I don't think he's a good guy, but I know I went about things wrong that day on the lawn. That I created a situation that was volatile, and you got hurt because of that. He turns to her now, their eyes meeting. That I am sorry for. There is nothing weak or delicate about Lily Evans's stare. It's all fight. She has the type of eyes that you go to war with. Okay, she says eventually. Thank you. James nods, and then, after a brief pause, gets back to his feet. This mean we're friends again? He asks, hands in his pockets. She smiles. Sure, Potter. We're friends. Good, he smiles back. I missed having you around, Evans. And he means it. When he gets back to the common room, Marlene, Alice, and Frank are in the middle of a blowout argument about Quidditch teams. The specifics are hard to work out, but James definitely hears the words Chudley Cannons, followed by no loyalty and couldn't catch a snitch if it bit him in the face. They're really going at it, huh? James pulls up next to Mary, who is still perched on the sofa. She nods, bringing her drink to her lips. It would be interesting if they weren't all completely wrong. James snorts, watching as a very red-faced Marlene gets on her knees, hands gesticulating as she explains why the Chudley Cannons will never take the cup without a proper seeker. How is she? Mary asks eventually, voice pitched low. James looks over at her, but her eyes are still on the fight below them. She's all right, yeah. James realizes that he doesn't really have any idea what the girls' friendships are like. He assumes they're close, but he doesn't actually know. Listen, James, about earlier... Mary goes on, sounding as though she'd rather have her teeth pulled than continue this conversation. I didn't mean to pry. Well, actually, I very much did mean to pry, but I probably shouldn't have. James waves her away. Don't worry about it. And then, listen, thanks for picking up all the slack today. That game would have been really fucking embarrassing if it hadn't been for you. She looks at him out of the corner of her eye, giving him a sharp smile. Oh, I know. He snorts. Good. That's when he notices that Peter's sitting alone. Talk to you later, yeah? He absent-mindedly pats Mary's shoulder as he maneuvers his way over to the other marauder, crouching down beside him. Good to see Lily didn't dismember you, Pete says with a smirk. Oh, ye of little faith, James sing-songs, earning him a low laugh. Hey, where's Mooney at? He watches the tightening of Peter's eyes. He went to bed. James's eyebrows raise, surprised. Bed? It's barely 8. Peter only shrugs, though his mouth has formed a firm line. That's what he said. Wormtail. James pushes, eyes running him over. What happened? Peter shoots him a sidelong look. Sirius came by. James swears every muscle in his body grows tense at those words. What did he do? Nothing. Peter shakes his head. Mary told him to sit down, and he said he had homework to do and ran up the stairs, and, well, you know, Mooney got pretty quiet after that, and then said he was tired. Is this how it's going to be now? James thinks, with an ache in the pit of his stomach, avoiding each other for the next 2 years. I thought about going up to check on him, but I don't know. It's hard to tell with him these days, whether he wants us around or not. Peter goes on, driving the blade in a little deeper. Yeah, James croaks, slapping him on the back. You stay here. I'll go. Peter looks worried, but nods. Let me know if there's anything I can do, yeah? Sure, Pete, James says, sparing their friends a brief look, just enough to confirm they're all too engrossed in the debate to notice him leave. And then he slips up the stairs. The room is dark when he walks in, and for a moment he thinks that maybe Remus really did go to sleep. But then he sees him, standing by his bed, book in one hand, bottle in the other. He doesn't recognize the book, thinks it might be Muggle, but Remus isn't exactly reading it, just looking. Hey, Moons, James says softly, leaning against the bedpost opposite him. Remus doesn't look up. I'm so tired of feeling like this, he says quietly, making James's heart squeeze. I know. Remus gives the book in his hand one last look before chucking it on his bed and bringing the bottle to his lips, chugging it back. Marilyn, now who needs to slow down? James laughs nervously, watching as Remus wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. It's supposed to help, right? He squeezes his eyes shut. I just need something to make it stop. Remus, James says softly. Remus's eyes open, bright in the shine from the moon outside. It's what you were trying to do earlier, right? James blinks, taking in the slightly unstable posture of his friend. I don't know what you mean. You were trying to forget him. Something slightly uneasy flutters through James's stomach. Forget who, mate? Remus stares at him, long and hard, for a moment before exhaling. Nothing. No one. Never mind. He holds out the bottle to James, who takes it without thinking. I'm going to bed. He doesn't bother with his clothes. Just shucks off his shoes before crawling under his mattress. It'll get easier, you know, James says helplessly. We'll figure it out. You think? Remus says skeptically. Then he squeezes his eyes shut again, pressing his face into his pillows. You want to know what the worst part is? Words muffled by the bed. No, James thinks. Isn't this bad enough? Sure, Moons, he says instead. Sometimes I don't even care. Don't care what he's done. Don't care that it was wrong. Sometimes I think I'd let him do anything he wanted to me, just as long as I still got to be around him. As long as he was still mine sometimes. Those words burn all the way down. I'm sorry, is all James says. All that he has left. Everyone's sorry, Remus mutters. Everyone's always sorry and none of it ever makes a difference. I fucking hate that word. His voice is heavy and slow, eyes still shut. It's clear sleep is sneaking up on him. James sighs, moving back toward the door when Remus stops him. No, don't. His voice calls out and James looks back to see him curled on his side, eyes wide open. Stay. Can you stay? For just a few minutes? He sounds so small. Of course, Mooney. James gives him a weak smile he isn't sure he can see. Always. He puts the bottle down on his bedside table before lying on his own bed, face toward the ceiling. I know you don't believe me, he says after a few minutes, voice soft. He's not sure how much Remus is listening. But I'm going to find us a way out of this. I don't know what it is yet, but we won't be like this forever, okay? I won't let it be. He waits for a few moments before turning his head, finding Remus's eyes closed. Chapter endnotes. Hello, beautiful people. Finally, we get to some Jegulus in this Jegulus fic. Also, so many scenes in this chapter were just completely rewritten. Like, originally, that bit in the supply room involved a lot more kissing, and the chapter ended with James drunk and Remus comforting him, so it was truly a wild ride. I'm so glad that people care about this fic, because I care about this fic. So thanks, as always, for your comments. Love to know what you think.
Chapter 17. Chapter summary. Summer of 76, baby! James spent the last night before summer holidays with Regulus. They laid on their backs, Regulus's fingers tracing the lines of his palm and the veins of his arm, causing every inch of his skin to tingle and spark to life. Oversensitive under Regulus's barely-there touches, they talked a little, they kissed a lot. Regulus had that faraway look in his eyes, like he was already back in London, already trying to close off parts of himself. James tried not to notice, not to let it hurt, but, of course, it did anyway. It was late when he finally said it. Not sure why he'd waited so long. I have something for you. He pulled out a stack of letters, 8 to be precise, 1 for every week of summer. I thought about writing one for every day, he laughed, rubbing the back of his neck, but it seemed excessive. Regulus stared at the envelopes in his hands, running them over like he couldn't quite believe they were real. I'm not sure I understand, he said finally. Well, I know I can't send you post over the summer, so I thought I'd give them to you now. Regulus blinks up at him. Give them to me now. They're all dated, James went on, so you can read them like I'm sending them to you in real time. I just thought, he trailed off, shrugging. I didn't want you to be alone all summer. After another long pause, he dropped his eyes, more nervous laughter. Maybe that's dumb, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud. It's definitely dumb, sorry. You don't have to. Regulus kissed him then. It had been a big kiss, full of feelings and words and desperation. All James could do was take it, was hold him. Thank you, Regulus said, when they finally came up for air. I love them. I love you. Several weeks later, lying on his bed in his childhood home, James runs over that memory for the 100th time, the way it had felt to hear Regulus say those words again, without needing to be forced or asked like they came naturally to him. He closes his eyes and tries to imagine the feel of the other boy's lips, the weight of him in his hands. He doesn't know if Regulus is okay, if he's read any of the letters, if he's thinking about James the way James is thinking about him, constantly, incessantly. He feels raw with all the things he doesn't know. James, his mother shouts, even though there are a dozen spells and a house elf who all could have communicated with him more efficiently. Breakfast! James slides out of bed, already dressed but reluctant to leave his room. Sirius hasn't tried to talk to him since they've been here, but that doesn't mean it still isn't incredibly uncomfortable to be in the same room as him. Part of James, the petty, childish part, is mad at Sirius for not trying harder. He should be bending over backwards to make this right. He should be begging for James's forgiveness, for Remus's, for Peter's. Instead, he's just gone silent, keeping his eyes down and his face hidden behind a curtain of dark hair, like he's trying to disappear. James drops into his chair at the kitchen table. Sirius is in the seat across from him, eyes trained on his breakfast. It's bright out. It has been almost every day this week. Sky's clear and sun fat in the sky. It's aggravating. James is not feeling particularly sunny at the moment. Look who it is, risen from the dead. His mother chirps as she drops a plate of eggs and toast in front of him, giving his head a quick kiss. Have you boys got any plans for today? She sweeps around the kitchen, brewing coffee with a swirl of one hand and sending dishes into the sink with the brush of another. Though he wouldn't have thought it possible, he thinks he sees Sirius curl further in on himself. His mother insists on acting as though everything is fine, as though they'll wake up one morning and it'll all be forgotten. Like Sirius didn't fucking betray each and every one of them. Going to Remus's, he says tersely, shoving eggs into his mouth like they've personally offended him. Both of you? No. He glares across the table at Sirius, daring him to say something, but he just keeps staring at his plate, barely touching his food. Don't you think... Mom? He cuts her off. Leave it. He meets her gaze, her stare not nearly as lighthearted and carefree as her tone would suggest. After a few moments of intense eye contact, she sighs. When will you be back? James shrugs, barely tasting the food he's eating, just desperate to finish and get away from his table and out of this house. He spent nearly every day this summer at Remus's, which James knows Remus hates, but there's nothing to be done for it. They can't hang out at Pete's. His mother is really weird about having people in her house, as in she hates it and they're not allowed. And they can't come here for obvious reasons, so the Lupins is their only option. James actually quite likes Remus's house, a small farm in the Welsh countryside. James has always thought it a crime that Remus hasn't gotten an accent, but he claims he doesn't actually speak to any Welsh people, and since neither of his parents are from there originally, he's never picked it up. James wipes his mouth on the back of his hand before standing and dumping his plate in the sink. Merlin, James, where's the fire? His mom laughs. Gotta catch the portkey, he says blandly, kissing her quickly on the cheek and not sparing Sirius a single glance. He slips on his trainers at the front door before pushing outside, not even bothering to do up his laces. Instantly, he feels lighter, even as the early August heat sticks to his skin. Lately, that house is full of all the things he can't fix. Promises he hasn't kept. He told Remus it wouldn't always be like this, and he meant it. He just hasn't quite figured out how yet. There are a couple portkeys set up in the area, leaving at designated times throughout the day. It's not a terrible way to travel, but it's also not the most convenient. The portkey only gets him to Wales, and then he has to take a Muggle bus to Remus's. He's become quite familiar with Muggle transportation this summer. Far more familiar than he ever wanted to be, if he's being honest. Not that he'd never used it before, of course. Mom used to take him into London when he was little, before Hogwarts. Day trips to the museums and parks and things. So he'd ridden the tube a few times. But public transport in a major city and public transport in the middle of nowhere Wales are two very different experiences, James has come to learn. The bus takes ages, of course, and then there's still another 20-minute walk from the road to Remus's front door. By the time he gets there, James is drenched in sweat, and the day is half gone. Oh, hello, James. Hope opens the door for him. You look knackered. Come in, come in. She waves him inside. Can I get you anything? Lemonade? Yes, please, that would be brilliant. He tries not to sound too desperate, but she smiles at him like she knows. Where's Remus? He asks, following her into the kitchen. James is completely obsessed with the Lupin's kitchen. It's full of Muggle appliances he's never seen before, like a fridge, which apparently keeps things cold no matter what the temperature is outside. James had asked Remus multiple times, but he swears it isn't magic. There's also a microwave that instantly heats up your food, so allegedly not magic, and an iron that makes waffles. Brilliant, James thinks. All of it. Remus is out back. Hope smiles as she hands him a cold glass of lemonade that he proceeds to gulp down like he's just spent a week in the desert. Hope arches her brow, smiling in a way that looks so much like Remus it's almost scary. Another? She asks. James chews on his bottom lip like he's actually considering saying no. If you don't mind? She laughs. I don't mind. Hope Lupin, James has learned this summer, is infinitely more relaxed when A, her husband isn't home, and B, she isn't surrounded by wizards. Well, adult wizards, anyway. She doesn't seem to mind James and Peter so much. But the one time his mother came to apparate him home, he noticed her getting jumpy again. James doesn't think it's prejudice or anything. It feels more like fear. He can't imagine what that must be like. To be married to someone you're afraid of. To have a son you're afraid of. He knows Remus feels it. The constant humming of fear beneath his mother's skin. Like she's expecting to be attacked. Though he imagines some of that is Fenrir's fault. "It's been so nice having you boys over so much this summer," she says as she returns his refilled glass. "Usually we barely get to see Rem. He's at your place so much." James smiles, nodding noncommittally. "It's a shame Sirius hasn't been able to join you, but then it's good for a teenage boy to have a summer job. I always worked in the summers, at my father's shop." James freezes mid-swallow. He chokes back the last of his lemonade, looking uncertainly at Hope. "Sorry, what was that about Sirius?" "His job, at the Quidditch shop in Diagon Alley, or whatever it's called. Remus told me that's why he hasn't been around this summer." She's still smiling at him, though it feels a little forced, and James suddenly has the intense desire to get out of the kitchen. Right, yeah, no, definitely true. Definitely true. He's been really busy at his job. He rubs nervously at the back of his neck, trying to understand why Remus would lie about that. "Well, he nods toward the back door. "Of course. Let me know if you need anything. Plenty more lemonade and snacks. Feel free to help yourself." "Right. Thanks," James says, before quickly turning around and bolting out of the house. The Lupin's garden is just an untended field. It might have grown crops at some point, but now it mostly grows wildflowers and weeds. James cuts his way through it, sun beating down, eyes peeled for a sandy blonde head. Eventually, he spots it, under the only tree for a mile, right at the edge of the property. "Could you have gone any further? Jesus Christ," he wheezes when he finally makes it up to him. Remus is leaning against the trunk, dark shades pushed up into his hair, book in his lap. The bastard barely even looks up. "If I'm any closer to the house, she comes out every 5 minutes to check on me," he says flatly, James collapsing into the ground in a sweaty heap. Mind you, I don't know what she's so worried about. I've already been bitten by a werewolf. James lets out a bark of laughter. "Geez, in a real chipper mood today, aren't we?" Remus just shrugs, going back to his book as James tries to catch his breath. "Speaking of your mum," he says eventually, pushing himself up onto his elbows so he can look at his friend properly, "why did you tell her that Sirius is a summer job?" Remus groans, letting his head fall back against the trunk behind him. Because she wouldn't stop asking why he hasn't been over. James feels like he's missed something. Surely she knows why. She was there in Dumbledore's office. Yeah, but as far as she's concerned, that never happened. James blinks. "What?" Remus nods, running a hand over his flushed face. You know how she is. Something bad happens, and she just sort of decides that it didn't. Him not hanging around was ruining the illusion for her, so she kept asking until I gave her a lie that would make her feel better. James can feel his eyes widen. "Jesus," he hisses. "Yep. I didn't realize she was so invested in your friendship." Remus grimaces. "She isn't, really. It's not about him. It's about me. Remus struggles for a moment, dropping his book onto the ground beside him and leaning forward, arms balanced on his knees. "She's worried I'm going to end up alone. Just, in general, in life." He laughs dryly, kicking at the ground. "Werewolves don't have friends. Lonely, pitiful creatures," he goes on bitterly, and James feels his blood run cold, realizing that Remus is repeating things that his parents have actually said to him. "My dad's told her that my life is doomed to be pretty fucking miserable," he goes on, shooting James a wry look. "She's worried that this thing with Sirius is the start of that." "The start of what?" James demands, trying to sort through the various levels of anger currently boiling under his skin. "Me losing friends because of my condition." "Bullshit." Remus just shrugs, falling back against the tree again. Makes her feel better, thinking he's just busy. James stares at him for a moment, before reaching forward and jabbing him in the side with his finger. "Ow, James, what the hell?" "Stop it." Remus's eyes narrow. "Stop what?" James gestures to him with his hand. "Being so melancholic. We're not going anywhere." "Yeah, okay. Still don't see why the violence was necessary." "Remus," James repeats. "I mean it. You're not going to be alone. Not ever. And you're about the least pitiful person I know, so that's out too." They're staring at one another, and James sees the small crack in Remus's sarcastic exterior. "Least pitiful person, huh?" James nods. Definitely. Marlene's a close second, though. He snorts, pausing for a minute before taking a deep breath. Thanks, he says, and James tries to pretend he doesn't hear the shake in his voice. He nods, collapsing onto his back again, looking up at the tree branches above them. Your family's pretty fucked up, huh? That gets a proper big laugh out of Remus, the noise swallowed by the never-ending fields surrounding them. Yeah, a bit. In the ensuing silence, James can hear the sound of the breeze blowing out through the tall grass, but doesn't really feel any of it on his skin, his body slowly overheating. He was not made for the heat, or for Muggle public transportation. How is he? Remus asks eventually, sounding resigned. James cringes, in no doubt about who he is. Miserable, Remus snorts. I feel like that's supposed to make me feel better, but it doesn't. Yeah, James nods, even though he's not sure that Remus can see. Tell me about it. Another brief pause. Look, James, if you want to forgive him, not a chance. And then, turning his head to look at his friend. Unless you want to. Remus sighs, closing his eyes. Want to? Absolutely. Can I? Fuck. I don't know. And oh, does James ever feel that right down in the pit of his stomach? He misses Sirius, desperately, almost more so now that they're home without anything else to distract him. Since he was 11, all he's ever wanted is for Sirius to live with him, and now he does, and they're not even speaking. We'll figure it out, he says eventually, which seems to be all he says these days. They've pulled off elaborate pranks, figured out how to make a map that tracks everyone in the castle, turned themselves into anime guy. Surely they can work their way through this, too. He can feel Remus looking at him. He does that a lot these days, like he's trying to figure James out, like something is bothering him. James keeps waiting for Remus to bring it up, but he never does, which James supposes shouldn't be a surprise. He exhales. Mooney? Yeah? You're staring. Am not. James rolls his eyes, propping himself up on his elbows. You were. Remus looks at him and then away, gaze running over the field in front of them. James can't tell if the flush on the top of his cheeks is from the sun or from being caught. Something you want to ask me? Remus lets out a dry laugh. Nothing you want to answer? That catches James' interest. Try me. He watches Remus chew his bottom lip, hands fidgeting in his lap as he keeps looking out at the field instead of back at James. Sirius told me you were seeing a bloke, he says finally, bluntly. So bluntly, in fact, that it takes James a minute or two to catch up. He shakes his head, sitting up properly and staring at his friend who still isn't looking at him. When did you talk to Sirius? Remus looks down. I don't know. A few weeks after it happened. It? He rolls his eyes. You know what I mean. I didn't know you were talking to him. I wasn't. I'm not. Remus has started pulling up the grass beside him. Nervous habit. Well, clearly you are. James isn't entirely sure why he's so peeved by this. Maybe just because it feels like a secret, something that's been kept from him on purpose. Or maybe it's because he's so desperate to talk to Sirius himself. Remus sighs, scrubbing at his face with his hands. It was only once, okay? Is that really what's important here? James just stares at him for a minute. T-shirt 2 sizes too big, ratty jean cutoffs he definitely made himself. Remus Lupin in his natural habitat. The unhappiness is oozing out of him. Fine, James says eventually, running a hand through his hair. Fine, okay, so he told you. I reckon you don't have a problem with it? Another dry laugh. No, I don't have a problem with it. But it's clear there's more. James can feel it, the weight of it hanging in the silence between them. Finally, Remus looks back at him. Is it Regulus Black? He wishes he was better at controlling his face. Wishes he couldn't feel his eyes widen or his mouth drop open. He's eventually able to school his features into something resembling neutral, but by then it's too late. Remus is seen. Jesus, fuck, James. Remus hangs his head between his knees, like he's going to be sick, and James thinks he might join him. Despite being in the middle of a field, James suddenly feels claustrophobic. Trapped. How do you know? Did Sirius... Remus laughs, though the noise isn't quite pleasant. You think if Sirius knew, either of you would still be breathing? James flinches. Not that he didn't know that already, but it feels worse having someone say it out loud. I saw you. On the map.
Saw you together in the middle of the night. Remus goes on, sounding weary. Put two and two together. Though, Merlin, I really wanted to be wrong. James swallows, throat tight. He's not sure what to say, how to explain, what to explain. It's all a bit of a mess, really. Apparently, Remus feels similarly because far too long they stay frozen. Neither of them looking, or speaking, or moving. The heat is getting too much for James. How long? Remus asks eventually. Last fall? Fuck, Remus hisses. What the fuck, James? What are you doing? What are you thinking? After everything, after what they did to Sirius, that wasn't Regulus, James snaps, anger flaring in his chest, which is better than whatever sad ache he was feeling before, so he'll take it. He's trapped there just like Sirius was. No, he isn't. You know he isn't. Sirius has been trying to get out of that house since he was 11 bloody years old. I mean, he got sorted into Gryffindor for Merlin's sake. From where I'm sitting, Regulus looks pretty fucking comfortable. You have no idea what you're talking about. James can hear himself getting louder, and is suddenly very grateful to be out in the middle of nowhere, away from everyone. He's fucking terrified. Did you know that Walburga uses legilimency on them? And judging by the look of horror that flashes across Remus's face, James is going to assume he didn't. They're all in his head, fucking him up, making him bury himself. So don't sit there and act like it's just as easy walking away, because it isn't. There's something new in Remus's gaze now. Something softer. Pity, James thinks. It doesn't make him feel much better. But is he trying? Remus asks softly. What? Something scratches at the inside of his chest. Jesus, James, I get it, okay? I was there too. Yeah? All those times Sirius shows up back to school looking like he'd had the fucking life beaten out of him. I know it's not easy. None of this is easy, but Sirius has always tried. Regulus walks around like he's one of them. He takes the protection it gives him. The privilege. Remus pinches the bridge of his nose while James just stares at him, the scratching in his chest growing violent. Maybe he doesn't agree with what his friends are doing. I don't know. But he isn't stopping them. Didn't stop them from hurting his brother. Is that okay with you? Can you get past that? Because, to be honest, James, I'm having a bloody hard time understanding how. James wants to scream. An unbearable pressure building inside his lungs. He shakes his head, closing his eyes, trying to get his thoughts in order. He can see Regulus in the supply room, eyes wide and earnest. You're my person. You're mine. Where is he supposed to go, Remus? He asks finally, barely able to get the words out. Sirius had us. Regulus has no one. When Remus doesn't speak, James forces himself to open his eyes again, finding his friend's gaze focused on him. He has you now, doesn't he? James nods. In the dark, in secret, doesn't exactly inspire confidence, does it? Remus takes that in, leaning his head back against the tree again and looking up at the branches above. That your idea or his? I don't know, James answers, not sure if it's a lie or not. Then, after a few seconds, he sighs. He's more scared than I am. Makes sense. Don't expect his lot will be particularly accepting. No, James says flatly. I need time to make him understand that I'm not going anywhere, that he can trust me. He takes in a shaky breath, trying to ignore the sting that confession causes, because he can see it, and Regulus's hesitancy, and the way that he still pulls away, that there's part of him that doesn't trust that James will be there when he needs him. I'm going to get him out of there, Remus, he says. Remus looks back over at him, expression unreadable. If anyone could, it'd be you, he says quietly, almost more to himself than to James. And then, louder, he bites his lower lip, the pity making a reappearance. Don't wear yourself out trying to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Okay? He breathes through the ache that causes. He wants to be Moons, really. James hopes that that's true. He's almost certain it is. Almost. His friend only nods. You planning on telling Padfoot about this at some point? James lets out a huff, collapsing onto his back again. Before? Maybe. Now? No. Let's just... one problem at a time, yeah? Yeah, Remus answers distantly, and James tries to ignore the skepticism in his voice.
It's nearly dinner by the time James gets home. He missed the bus, and the next one took ages. How muggles get anywhere on time, he has no idea. Right now, he just wants to go upstairs and lie down. Maybe take a shower. He's covered in sweat and dirt from sitting on the ground all afternoon. "James, hun, is that you?" His mother calls from his father's office. James groans internally, heading grumpily down the hall. "Yeah, you need something?" he asks as he swings into the room, not moving far beyond the door. His mother snorts. "Hello to you, too." "Sorry, I'm just tired." She's sitting at his father's desk, a giant wooden monstrosity that reminds James far too much of Dumbledore's office. "How's Remus?" his mother asks pleasantly. "Fine." "Good. I haven't seen him much recently." "Geez, what is it with mothers and not being able to take a hint?" "I wonder why that is," he responds flatly. "You can be angry without being snotty, you know," she says, eyebrows arched. James sighs, running a hand through his sweaty hair. "Thanks for the tip. Did you call me in here just to lecture me about my attitude, or is there something else you want?" "Wow, you really are in a mood, aren't you?" "I hate the bus." That gets a laugh out of her, big and bright, enough that it pulls the corners of James's mouth up. "Fair enough, I suppose." And then she pushes something forward across the desk. James squints at it, stepping closer. "What is it?" "A letter," she says simply. "It's addressed to you. Came by Muggle post." "What?" He scrunches his face, looking back at her. "Yes," she smiles. "I was rather surprised, too. So was the mailman, now that I think about it." "Mailman?" She waves his question away. "Muggle owl." "Instead of owls, Muggles use men? That sounds bloody inefficient. Almost as inefficient as their stupid buses that only come once a stupid hour." "James," she says, biting back a smile. "Focus." "Oh, right." He picks up the white envelope with its funny little picture in the corner and neat handwriting spelling out his name and address. "Who's it from?" "I don't know. There's no return address." "Return what?" His mother laughs again. "Never mind. I had to run some spells on it, make sure it was safe. Technically, I'm supposed to give anything odd to Moody to check out, but..." Something twinkles in the corner of her eyes that James doesn't quite understand. A joke he's missed. "I feel confident it's safe." Okay. Cheers. He starts to open it and his mother quickly gets up. "I'll leave you to it, shall I?" she says lightly, planting a kiss on the top of his head as she breezes past. "Don't you want to know who it's from?" he asks, confused as he watches his mother head for the door. "Oh, I have my suspicions, though feel free to confirm them for me later if you like." "Wait, Mom?" She pauses, turning back to him. "Is Sirius here?" She shakes her head. "Gone into town, to the shops. That's what he said, anyway." She smiles sadly. "That's what he does most days." James nods, suddenly not sure why he asked. He's just used to knowing. "Thanks." She gives him one last smile before closing the door, leaving James alone in his father's office, arguably his least favorite room in the house. He's only ever called in here when he's in trouble. It's a dark space, wooden floors and walls, never-ending bookcases, an overly ornate fireplace, all rather suffocating if you ask James. Slowly, his attentions draw back to the letter in his hands, and he drops into the chair his mother just left, sliding his finger under the seal and pulling out the pages inside. "Hi." James pauses, squinting at the word, the curving script, recognition slowly dawning on him. "Don't ask me what I'm thinking," the letter goes on. "I've spent too much time with you. Clearly, all my common sense has gone out the window." "Oh." The word comes out of James on his next exhale, chest aching as he hears the words so clearly in Regulus's voice. He hadn't been ready for this. "I can't send you post via owl, but I thought, well, it's not as though my mother is checking the Muggle mail. I don't think so, anyway. I suppose we'll find out. I'm not even sure this will get to you. Bertha, she works at the post office here, tried to explain to me how it all works. Muggle mail, I mean. Sounds like a dreadful system, if you ask me, but she double-checked that I addressed this correctly, so maybe there's a chance it'll make it to you anyway. I hope it makes it to you. I'm in Scotland, at the summer house. It's good to get out of the city, and I can fly here, which helps. My dad loves it. He grew up in the country and mostly just tolerates London for my mother's sake. He spends most of his days out in the back garden watching me fly. It makes him happy, though I have no idea why. Still, I'll do anything at this point. He's worse than he was at Christmas. The healers don't expect him to last much longer, but then, they're always saying that. Sorry, I'm rambling. I'd start over, but I've already done this 3 times, and I have to go home soon. I've been reading your letters. See, this is where I always get stuck. It's the reason for the rambling at the top, because I've been reading your letters. That's why I'm writing this ridiculous letter and sending it to you in the ridiculous Muggle post. Because every time I read them, I just want to talk to you. I miss talking to you. I miss your voice. I miss the way you laugh. I miss your atrocious hair. I miss. That's all I do these days. Well, that and go to the gallery. I visited Patroclus and Achilles a few times. Told them you said hi. God, sorry, that was awful. I don't know what I'm saying. Look, all I meant to say really is that the letters are beautiful. Your letters are beautiful. And I wish that I could be what you are to me. I know I'm not very good at this, but I want to be. For you. Anyway, this is enough embarrassment for one letter. I don't think I'll try this again, but I hope that you're happy. Whatever you're doing, whoever you're with. Yours always. James rereads those last 2 words a few times. To anyone else, it would be a half-finished sign-off, but James understands. You're my person. You're mine. Okay, Reg. Yeah. I'm yours. You're mine, too. He traces them with his finger a few times, imagining Regulus sitting in some Muggle post office in Scotland, penning them out. Yours, always. He takes in a deep breath and fights the urge to find the closest port key to Scotland. Not that he'd have any real idea where he was going. Regulus never mentioned specifics. His eyes flick across the page again. Once, twice, greedy for every word, every sentence, every piece of Regulus he can squeeze out of it. I miss. Me too, James thinks. God, me too. He tries to remember if he thought to put that in his letters, but he must have. He misses Regulus the minute he walks away. The next morning, like every morning, James finds himself sitting silently across from his best friend, both of them working overtime not to look or to speak to one another, or indicate that they are in any way aware of the other's existence. Euphemia attempts to engage them in conversation a few times before giving up and going back to her work, parchment spread out in front of her as she ladles marmalade onto her toast. James asks her what the papers are for, but she's cagey with her answers. She always is these days. When the owls arrive, it's a welcome break from the tension. Well, until James realizes what they're delivering. Your school lists already? His mom says, peering over his shoulder. The letters are pretty standard. All his books and supplies for next term neatly laid out and... Oh, James! His mother beams as she holds up the Quidditch captain badge. He allows himself a brief look across the table, but Sirius is staring with an odd intensity at the parchment in his hands. Your father is going to be over the moon, his mom goes on, getting up to grab a mug for her coffee. James only nods. It's bittersweet, really. I mean, it's what he's always wanted, but Sirius won't be there. Or Alice. Or Frank. The loss of them makes it all a bit more hollow. He passes the badge through his fingers a few times before turning back to the letter, realizing suddenly that there's another page hidden behind the first. Dear Mr. Potter, it reads, as you are aware, Frank Longbottom graduated last year, leaving your dorm with an empty bed and Sirius Black without a room. It would be possible to place him in another room, but that would require you to accept a new roommate. Since you were the one who first suggested his removal, and since some time has passed since the inciting incident, I thought it prudent to verify that it is still your wish not to room with Sirius Black. Please discuss this with Mr. Lupin and respond to me quickly with your decision. Sincerely, Minerva McGonagall. He forgot about this, about what it means that Frank is gone. He had always been a temporary fix, a stall, putting off the inevitable of having to deal with Sirius. James scans the letter a few more times, but it doesn't come up with any solutions. Part of him never wants to share a room with Sirius again. The other part is desperate to have things go back to the way they were. Of course, it isn't about him. It'll all come down to what Remus wants. Maybe he'll go back there later today and... I don't understand. Sirius's voice cuts through the kitchen with such urgency that James forgets he's supposed to be ignoring him, looking up just as his mother reaches Sirius's side. What is it, love? She asks. He passes her the parchment in his hands, wide-eyed and pale. It's only then that James realizes that Sirius's Hogwarts letter is still lying unopened on the table. I don't understand why... That can't be right. I must be... Because why would he do that? His voice is small and shaking, and James has the irritating urge to reach out and squeeze his arm. He doesn't, of course. He just keeps staring, eyes bouncing between Sirius's face and his mother's. Oh, Sirius, his mother says softly, eyes flicking over the page in front of her, hand falling on his shoulder. It's a mistake, right? They've made a mistake. His mother chews her bottom lip. No, love, I don't think so. It all seems rather legitimate. It's hard for James to work out what emotion is playing across Sirius's face. Pain, disbelief, awe. He can't take it. He breaks. What's going on? He asks, bringing both of the heads across from him, snapping in his direction. His Uncle Alfred, Euphemia says softly. He seems to have changed his will not long before he died and left everything to Sirius. James's eyes go wide. Everything? Sirius sinks down in his chair, face pale. I don't know why he did that. I barely knew him. His voice is thick, and he coughs like he can get the feelings out of it. James watches his mother squeeze Sirius's shoulder again, thumb making comforting circles. Clearly, you are very important to him. Sirius's breath hitches, eyes somewhere on the floor, not looking at either of them. James remembers the look on his face, the first time he mentioned his uncle, remembers the care he always took with the letters he sent him. Sirius may have barely known Alfred, but knowing him at all had meant a lot to him. Sirius could be glib about his family, but however awful they were, walking away from them had still cost Sirius something. Not because he missed Grimmauld Place or Walburga, but because he missed belonging. However much the Potters embraced him, he would always be a Black. An extra piece. We should go into town today. Sort this out. His mother breaks the silence that's crept up around them. The lawyer's office in Diagon Alley, so that's easy. She leans down and kisses the top of Sirius's head. I'll go get ready, and we can leave in an hour, okay? Sirius nods quietly, Euphemia giving him one last squeeze before moving quickly out of the room, spelling her papers to follow behind her. The two boys remain frozen at their seats, Sirius unable to look at James, and James unable to look away from Sirius. He has no idea what's in that will, but he reckons it's probably a good amount of money. Alfred was a Black after all. He wonders if he had a wife and children, but he mustn't have. Not if he's left everything to Sirius. James realizes, suddenly, how very little he knows about Alfred Black, guilt worming its way into his gut. He should have asked Sirius more about him. Eventually, Sirius gets up, not looking at James, until he reaches the kitchen door. Will, he croaks, voice startling James, who turns to face him. Will you come with us? He hesitates, feeling entirely unprepared for all of this. Sirius quickly shakes his head. Sorry, that was stupid. Never mind. Sirius, he calls to him before he can get too far down the hall. The other boy turns back, and James wonders if this is the first time they've spoken since the night it all happened. It feels like it. I'll come, he exhales. Of course I'll come. Too many emotions flash across Sirius's face for James to make sense of them, but when he speaks, it sounds like the first breath after a deep dive. Thank you.
The lawyer's office is in a worryingly thin building, squeezed in between a botany shop and a Chinese food restaurant. It's possible that at one point it was an actual color, but it's covered in so much soot and dirt now that it's just murky gray. They're all sitting in front of his tall, spindly wizard, his hair orange and curly, streaked to the temples with gray, his robes starched straight and black. He has a very thin face, high cheekbones, and big, watering eyes, like he's in a constant state of distress. Makes it very hard for James to take him seriously. Sirius is sat next to him, his mom on Sirius's other side. He has his head down, hands fiddling in his lap, and James is reminded unkindly of that day in Dumbledore's office. Can I just say it again, Mrs. Potter? The lawyer Mr. Beagle says for the 100th time as he scrounges through the papers on the desk. "What an absolute honor it is to have you here, to be able to serve you. An indescribable honor." His mother smiles kindly. "Thank you, but you really don't need to fuss." To be honest, James isn't sure this man has ever done anything but fuss. "Ah!" He pulls out a scroll, slowly unfurling it between his hands. "The last will and testament of Alfred Black," he announces proudly, peering over at them as though expecting some kind of reaction. Applause. When he doesn't get any, he turns back to the parchment. "There are several logistical elements that I expect you're not interested in, but, here we are." He clears his throat. "To my nephew, Sirius Black III, I leave in the entirety of my estate, including my home in Cornwall, my flat in Diagonally, and the contents of my account at Gringotts, totaling 300,000 galleons, 700 sickles, and 50 nuts. Included in this is my art collection, encompassing—" Sirius seems to sink further into his chair with every word the lawyer says. Unable to help himself, James shifts closer, knocking their shoulders together, leaning on Sirius just long enough for him to know that it was intentional. The other boy looks up for the first time, their eyes meeting. James doesn't need him to speak now to know what he's thinking. I killed him, and now I'm getting all his stuff." The lawyer continues to list the numerous priceless artifacts also being left to Sirius, his voice droning on. Eventually, Sirius's eyes break with James and return to the man in front of them. Excuse me," he cuts in, interrupting a description of gold-plated tableware. The lawyer looks up, startled. "Yes, sir?" "You're sure he meant to do this?" Sirius asks, looking at him a little desperately. "That he wasn't, I don't know, drunk or held at wand point or something?" "Certainly not." The man seems affronted that such a question would ever even be asked. "I was here when this will was run up. I witnessed it with my own eyes. Mr. Black was sound of mind, everything above board." His eyes shift nervously over to James's mother. "I'm sure it was," she said softly, putting him at ease. "I just don't understand why he did it." Sirius is talking to Euphemia now. "I never gave him anything." She smiles sadly, reaching out to brush the hair off his forehead. "Maybe you did, and you just didn't realize it. You are quite remarkable, Sirius." He flinches at that, and James knows that he is partially responsible for Sirius's astronomically high levels of self-hatred at the moment. After a brief pause, Euphemia looks back at the lawyer. "I think we're ready to continue." Yes, yes, of course." In the end, all they need to do is confirm Sirius's magical signature in order to authenticate the will. The tap of a wand, and he's suddenly rich all on his own. No need for his mother or his inheritance. You'd think he'd find some of that comforting, but he stays tense and sober the whole time, even when they make it back onto the street. "Well," his mother says, squinting through the sun, "since we're already here, shall we check it out?" Check what out?" James asks. She looks over at him, hands shielding her eyes. "The flat?" Her gaze skips from James to Sirius, cocking her brow in question. It takes him a minute, but eventually he nods. "Yeah," he says, ruffling his hair. "Yeah, okay." They don't talk as they maneuver through the busy streets, Sirius with his head down and his hands in his pockets, James awkwardly at his side, following the back of his mother's head. He knows he should say something, that he probably would have already if things were different, but given that they're still fighting, because they are, aren't they? He's not really sure what the right course of action is here. "This is it." Euphemia stops in front of a blue door with a bronze knocker, pulling a key from the envelope the lawyer gave them and holding it out to Sirius. "Yours, I believe." He takes it hesitantly, fumbling as he fits it into the lock. The door opens into a small foyer with a set of stairs leading up. James thinks he hears Sirius gulp as they push inside. The apartment is nice, warmer than James was expecting. He always pictures the Blacks living in recreations of the Slytherin common room, but this space isn't that. It's got worn wood floors and butter yellow walls, a big bay window in the living room with a rug and a sofa covered in blankets and pillows. None of the expensive art pieces Mr. Beagle had mentioned are hung up here. Instead, the walls are covered in concert posters, some looking like they were literally torn off of walls and lampposts. None of them are magic, as far as James can tell. There's one bedroom, the sheets still messed up, a small kitchen with a mug in the sink, shoes carelessly removed by the door, all the signs of someone meaning to return. James half expects him to walk through the door. "Well," his mom says, once they all find themselves back in the living room. She stands by the front door, Sirius across the room, leaning against the entrance to the kitchen. "This is lovely. We should find a time next week, go through everything, figure out what you want to keep. I'll tell Mimi to pop by every once in a while to make sure it's kept in good shape until you decide you want to use it. If you want to, that is." She corrects herself. "You could always sell it or rent it out, of course. It is a rather fabulous location." Sirius has a look on his face like he's got something stuck in his throat. He nods along, fingers nervously playing with his lower lip. "Actually," he says eventually, "I was thinking I might move here." There's a pause. "You mean now?" Euphemia asks, causing something cold to run down James's spine. Sirius nods, very purposefully not making eye contact with anyone. "You are still a minor, Sirius." "I know, but you're my guardian, right?" "I am." "So you could give me permission to be on my own." James is waiting for his mother to laugh, to tell Sirius what a ridiculous suggestion that is, and of course he can't move in here. But that isn't what happens. "I'd have to talk to Fleamont, but if you really want to..." "Are you joking?" James can't take it anymore. He can't move out. He turns to Sirius. "You can't move out." Sirius glares back at him defiantly. It's the most like himself he's looked all summer. "Why not?" "Why not?" James demands. "Because you're a kid. You don't even know how to make bloody toast. How the hell are you going to live on your own?" "First of all, I'm not a kid, you prat. And I can totally make toast," he says defensively. "Why the hell do you care anyway? Isn't this what you want? For you to starve to death? Not really, no." Sirius throws his arms up in frustration. "I can manage feeding myself, James. Jesus Christ." "You can't move in here." He doubles down, teeth clenched. "Yes, I can." "No, you can't." "Yes, I can." James turns back to his mother, jabbing an indignant finger in Sirius's direction. "Are you really going to let him do this?" "I do remember saying something about needing time to talk about it." She sounds far too casual for James's liking. "You don't get to decide what I do, Prongs." "I do when you're being an idiot." Sirius scowls. "I'm not being an idiot." And then, with a frustrated huff, "I don't get you. You kick me out of the dorm, you don't speak to me for weeks, and now suddenly you're desperate to have me living in your house? What do you want from me?" "I want you to have not fucking told Snape," he snaps, the words ripping out of him like they hurt. Because they do. Sirius looks like he's just been hit, anger fleeing his face and that familiar lost look back in place, the one that's been a permanent fixture all summer. "I'm gonna wait for you two at the bottom of the stairs," Euphemia says quietly, neither of them turning to watch as she slips out of the room. "I want you to have not done it," James repeats, voice gravel. "You think this has been fucking fun for any of us? You think I want to be mad at you? I hate it." His voice cracks, but he pushes on, Sirius watching him with wide eyes. "But I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to forgive you, Sirius." And now he's begging, really. Begging Sirius to tell him how. How do we get past this? How do we go back? I don't want to be broken anymore. "I'm sorry," Sirius says. It's all he ever seems to say these days. James sighs, bringing his hands up to his face and turning away, toward the window. "But I did it," Sirius goes on, talking to James's back. "I wish I hadn't. Get me a time turner, I'll go back, I'll change everything." James shakes his head. "I want you to have not done it," he repeats. "I want you to be incapable of it." "I'm sorry." "I thought we were on the same page. I thought we were going to protect each other no matter what. Have each other's backs no matter what." God, it sounds so stupid now that he says it out loud. So childish. "We are, James. I swear, I never meant to hurt him. I would never hurt him. I wasn't thinking. It was, my head was all fucked up, and I saw Snape and the stupid fucking sneering face, and I acted. I didn't think. You know me. I never think. Sirius sounds breathless, the room filled with ghosts, with what-ifs and maybes and should-haves. All of it stings, their friendship an open wound. Eventually, James turns back around to face him. Sirius has stepped forward, face pale, hair mussed from running his hands through it. James knows he means it. Means all of it. Knows that he's sorry. When you're younger, it all feels so much simpler. Someone apologizes to you and you accept. It's supposed to be enough. But it doesn't feel like enough anymore. But you were supposed to think about us, he says eventually, watching Sirius flinch. That's the thing, he croaks, voice splintering on its way out of his mouth. I do. All the time. You guys are all I think about. What I'm going to tell you, what would make you laugh, where you are, what you're doing. If you wish I was there, like I wish I was there. I do think about you. He's as close to sobbing as James has ever seen someone who isn't already crying. It was one time. The one time I wasn't thinking about you, and I... Dry and cracked and desperate. I'm so fucking scared. I'm so scared of what I did that all it took was one moment and I hurt the most important people in my life. And the worst part is, I didn't even feel it. He squeezes his eyes shut, trying to pull his words together. I knew that you were upset, that Peter was upset, that it wasn't funny, but I couldn't feel the wrongness of it. Not until I saw you crawling out of the tree covered in blood. And then it was like something in me cracked open, and all of a sudden it was all there. There's a desperate look in his eyes when he opens them again. I don't know what's wrong with me, he whispers. James is moving before he can think about it, pulling Sirius into his arms as he falls apart. It hurts, but then James is used to that at this point, so he just holds Sirius tighter. He wonders how this is allowed to happen, how anyone ever let Sirius stay in that house so long, how they let Reculus stay there still. How can he be the only one who sees them? Fuck, Sirius huffs, pulling away and wiping his face on the inside of his shirt. James is reluctant to let him go. Don't move out, he says, a confidence in his voice now that he doesn't feel about anything right now. Sirius looks tired. I can't stay there like this, James. I can't handle us acting like we don't know each other, like we hate each other. It's fucking killing me. Me too, James agrees, doing his best to keep his voice under control. For the first time in a long time, Sirius looks hopeful. Yeah? James nods. I don't hate you, Sirius. I never have. Sirius lets out a wet laugh. Thank fuck for that. James smiles back, even if it is a little shaky. Don't move out. He repeats, I'm not saying everything is fixed, but I don't want you to go. Can that be enough? Sirius sniffles, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Yeah, he says eventually. That can be enough. James sends Remus an owl as soon as they get home. Brief, to the point. Moons, can we talk tonight? Fireplace? Midnight? James. He doesn't want Sirius to be there for this. The two of them they're better, but they're fragile. They make more awkward small talk on the way home, not really able to look at one another, but trying not to look away. It'll be easier, James thinks, after he talks to Remus. It'll feel less like a betrayal. He waits by the fireplace in his father's office, door closed, Mom and Sirius up in their bedrooms, McGonagall's letter clutched in his hand. The flames flicker a few times before Remus's face emerges. Hey, he says lamely. Hey, Remus returns. Everything okay? Your letter seemed kind of urgent. Oh, yeah, everything's okay. He tries to swallow, but his throat is too tight. Listen, I got my Hogwarts letter today. Remus gives him a funny look. Yep, I figured. They usually send those out at the same time. He laughs a little. What's up with you, James? You're acting like I'm Lily or something. That brings a smirk to James's face. You think I'm trying to seduce you, Lupin? Remus arches his brow, impressively sassy even in the fireplace. Are you? Always. They both laugh at that, breaking the tension. James can do this. He can. He just doesn't know how to start. James, Remus pushes. Right, sorry, so I got another letter with my school list. Oh? Yeah, he nods, feeling the parchment in his hand like a hot coal. Yeah, it's from McGonagall. She wants to know if we want to room with Sirius again, or if she should find us a new roommate. He sees the surprise on Remus's face, and then sees him try to suppress it almost immediately. Oh, he says. Yeah, that was how I felt about it too. Bit of a gut punch? Yeah. They're both nodding at each other, neither of them sure where this goes next. James doesn't want to tell him about the conversation he had with Sirius. Not yet, anyway. Doesn't want him to feel pressured into anything because he thinks it's what James wants. What are you going to tell her? Remus asks finally, and James almost laughs. Whatever you tell me to. James, but he shakes his head, cutting Remus off. You were the one fucked over here, Remus. The rest of us were just collateral damage. You decide what you need, what makes you feel comfortable. Whatever you want, I'll support it. He can see Remus biting his lower lip, the nervous energy wafting off the fire like smoke. God, it shouldn't be this hard, Remus mutters, and then laughs at himself. It's a heavy sound. Fuck it. Okay. Okay, James asks. Remus swipes a hand across his face. Tell her it's okay. I'm not rooming with a stranger. That's ridiculous. The amount I'd have to hide every full moon was hard enough with Frank, and we liked him. He shakes his head. We'll deal with Sirius. I don't know how, but we will. Besides, it would feel wrong having anyone else in there. Don't you think? James nods, trying to contain his relief. Yeah, I do. For good or bad, he already knows all my secrets. Remus sighs. Are you sure? Yeah, no, not really. He gives James a sad smile. But I'm not really sure about anything these days. I know the feeling. James feels his grip loosen on the letter in his hand. Okay, well, I'll write her tonight. Remus nods. I should go. My mom won't sleep until she knows I'm in my room. Right. Okay. I'll come around tomorrow, yeah? Sounds good. I think Pete's planning to come by, too. Brilliant. Mooney? He says. Yeah? James takes a deep breath. I have your back. Always. You know that, right? Something flickers in his eyes, but James isn't sure if it's really there or if it's just the fire. Yeah, James. I know. Me too. I have your back. I know I was a little harsh yesterday, but I'm here if you need anything, okay? James nods, smiling. Good night, Moons. Night, James. The fireplace splutters, flames reaching out for a second and then reaching back as the connection is severed. James sits back on his heels, trying to let go of some of the anxiety still clinging to his skin. It's okay. Everything went okay. Remus said yes. Sirius can come back. Nothing is fixed, of course, not completely, but at least it's a start. They're mending. He gets up, rounding his father's desk and pulling out a fresh piece of parchment. He scribbles McGonagall a note. Nothing fancy, but he wants to get this done now. When it's sealed and addressed, he goes to the back garden and whistles for Hoot. He comes out almost instantly, happy to have a job. James hasn't had much for him to do this summer. That a boy, he says softly, tying the letter to his leg and ending him off. He's almost instantly lost in the black night sky. Okay, James whispers to himself, hand running through his hair. Okay. It's rubbish, trying to comfort yourself. Never works. Still, he tries to get himself to relax. Today was a good day. Hard and long and bloody exhausting, but good. He's only just come back inside when he hears the crack of someone appearing into the front hallway.
Bloody hell.
They curse as he walks through the kitchen toward them. He knows it's his dad. There's no one else who's keyed into their wards. Well, except for Dumbledore and Moody, but that bloody hell was definitely his dad. You're back late. James stops at the top of the hall, his father looking up at the sound of his voice, face bloodied. Dad? Fremont tries to smile and then winces. Bad, huh? Haven't had the chance to look in the mirror yet. And then he starts limping toward his office, as though showing up in the middle of the night, beaten to a fucking pulp, is nothing out of the ordinary. What the hell happened? Are you okay? He follows him into the office, watching as he throws his cloak on his desk, the shirt underneath dirty and blood-splattered. Shh, he says, opening the closet and peering into the mirror hung up on the inside. I don't want to wake your mother. He pulls out his wand and starts casting healing charms. James watches as the skin on his face starts stitching itself back together, bruises fading. Dad, he repeats, still standing in the doorway. What happened? He can see that his dad is okay. He's standing right in front of him, so he doesn't know why he suddenly feels so afraid. Well, his father says, eyeing his face one more time before deciding it's good enough. He pulls away from the mirror and leans against the front of his desk, facing James. I encountered a bit of a situation trying to leave work. I can see that, James says, fighting between concerned and annoyed now. Fremont offers him another small smile. They're really the only kind he has. Everything else he expresses is tinged with a bit of self-conscious embarrassment. Nothing like the boisterous emotions of James's mom. There have been attacks, his father sighs, sagging a little bit. Now that the blood is gone, James can clearly see the deep bags under his father's eyes, lines marking up his forehead and mouth in a way like they never have before. For the first time in his life, James finds himself thinking that his father looks old. 3 in the last 2 weeks. 3? James demands, because he's been reading the paper every day, and he hasn't seen a single bleeding thing about attacks. Fremont nods. All ministry employees, usually leaving or coming into work. Moody thinks it's a new kind of initiation. Initiation for what? His father sends him a look. Oh. Death Eaters are attacking the ministry now? His father does not seem nearly as concerned as James thinks he should be. It's only a theory. No one's died yet. They don't seem to be very well organized. That's what makes us think they're not proper members. James isn't sure if that's supposed to be comforting, but it isn't. Why don't they have extra security then? A rueful smile finds its way into Fremont's face. There's some, but the minister doesn't want to allow Moody to post too many. Afraid if people start seeing hordes of Aurors marching around, they'll get the wrong idea. Which is that we're in trouble. James feels something squirm in the pit of his stomach. Are we? He asks, voice tight. In trouble? The good humor slowly drops from his father's face. Yes. Oh. Which James realizes is a stupid and inadequate response, but it's the only one he has. I'm not trying to scare you, James, his father says softly, but I don't want to lie to you either. Feeling slightly dazed, James shakes his head. I'm not scared. An automatic response. Well, a sad smile finds its way onto his father's face. Then you're a braver man than I am. James doesn't believe that for a second. It's late. His father pushes off the desk. You should head up to bed before your mother comes down here and gives us both grief. You aren't going to bed? James asks. His father nods at the fireplace behind him. I've got to call Dumbledore. Let him know what's happened. Right. Okay. He's hesitant to move, but he can't think of an excuse to stay, so reluctantly he starts making his way toward the door. James? His dad calls to him before he's out of the room. James turns back. I don't think I've had the chance to tell you, but I'm really proud of how you handled everything this past year at school. When James's brows inevitably draw together in confusion, his father chuckles, explaining, I know you and Snape aren't exactly on the best of terms, but it was incredibly brave and decent what you did, going after him, saving him. James isn't exactly sure what to say to that. I didn't do it for him, he manages eventually. I did it for Remus. His father nods, a knowing look on his face. You're a good friend. James shrugs. They're important to me. Good, his father says, moving slowly behind his desk. Hold on to that feeling. Let it keep you together. There's no wavering in James's voice when he answers. I intend to. Chapter endnotes. Hello, lovelies. My God, this chapter is the bane of my existence. Just cannot get it right. But here we are, mostly because I'm impatient and want to work on the next one. Also, I wish I had a rich uncle who would die and leave everything in his will to me, but oh well. Thank you for being so nice all the time. It is truly so lovely to read your comments. Hope you're having a good day.
I apologize for the noise in the back of this one, because there might be some extra sound, but here we go. Chapter 18. It's Lily, he has her eyes, Evans. Trigger warning, very, very vague reference to suicide or suicidal thoughts, and discussion about homophobia. Lily lies on her bedroom floor, record player in on the background, music drifting over her. It's brutally hot, too hot to move or think. Her fingers drag lazily through the beige carpet that covers every room in the house except the bathroom and kitchen. Her father always used to talk about tearing it out, but he never got around to it. She's glad that he didn't. It feels like home now. After spending all year surrounded by stone, she comes back to soft floors and warm colors. Lily! A shrill voice cuts through the music. She doesn't move, doesn't open her eyes. Maybe if she lies very, very, very still, they won't be able to find her. Barely 2 minutes later, the door to her room is being thrown open. Jesus, Lily, couldn't you hear me? She sighs, cracking one eye open to peer up at the towering figure of her sister, dark hair still in curlers, the mint green nightgown she's had since she was 13 brushing against her knees. No, sorry, Lily says mildly, not bothering to move. This, predictably, infuriates Petunia. You said you would help! Everything with her sister is a lightly veiled guilt trip. You said you would help. You owe me. Make up for it. For the magic. For not being here. You said you would help. Lily sighs, pulling herself upright and resting her arms on her knees. What do you need? Petunia is really rather pretty. Probably is the prettier of the two of them. The problem is, she's always got this pinched look on her face. Sour and unhappy and constantly let down. It makes her unappealing to look at. Food for my hen do. Nice food, though. Not just the crisps from the grocery store. Lily blinks up at her. Nice food? Petunia sighs like Lily is the stupidest person she's ever met. Cheeses and baguettes and charcuterie boards. Charcuterie? Gesundheit. No, it's... Never mind, Lily laughs. She gets to her feet. Yeah, okay, I can go get you some posh snacks. When do you need them for? 4. Lily's eyes skate over to the clock on her bedside table. It's only 10 in the morning. What all the yelling about, she has no idea. As if snacks are going to take more than 6 hours to get, even the posh ones. Also, pick us up some Prosecco. Lily gives her a flat look. I'm underage. Her sister smiles unpleasantly. And yet you still manage to get those dirty cigarettes you don't want Mom to see. Lily rolls her eyes. Yes, okay, I'll try. But if they don't take my fake, it's not my fault. Petunia makes a very lofty humph noise. I'm sure you'll be fine. If anything goes wrong, you can just use your little stick and magic it all away. That's not how it... Lily! Her mom's voice echoes from downstairs. Phone for you. Oh, thank God. Hey, wait. But Lily slips past her. Sorry, gotta take this. She cries over her shoulder as she skids around the corner. Lily! Ugh! She practically crashes into her mom, who's leaving the living room at the exact moment that she makes it to the bottom of the stairs. She looks at Lily and then back behind her where Petunia can still be heard grumbling, probably cursing Lily's name. I'll get her snacks, I promise, Lily says before her mother can start. Mrs. Evans sighs. Listen, I know she's being... She trails off but sends Lily a look that is clearly meant to say a crazy bitch, so Lily nods. But she's just stressed. Vernon's sister is coming to the hen do and she wants to impress her. Sure, Mom, I get it. Lily doesn't point out that Petunia is always like this around her, has been since she was 11 years old. Her mom smiles a little sadly. You're a good girl, Lily. She tries not to cringe. Thanks, Mom. I better... She nods toward the telephone in the living room. Oh yeah, of course, go on. Lily does, enthusiastically, not even bothering to ask who it is. Any conversation is better than whatever was happening in her bedroom. Hello? She sings as she throws herself onto the armchair by the phone. Jesus, where were you coming from? Alaska? We've been waiting on the line for ages.
Lily smiles at the sound of Mary's voice. We? She asks. Oh yeah, Mars here. You're on speaker, by the way, so if you have anything nasty to say about her, it'll have to wait until later. Oh my God, Mary. You can practically hear Marlene rolling her eyes over the phone. Hey, Lily. How's it going? How's home? She grimaces, glad they can't see. Lily does her best not to let it get to her, and by it, she very much means her sister. With Petunia, it's easier to pretend it's all a joke. The glaring and passive-aggressive comments, some ridiculous sketch on a comedy program. Better to laugh than to yell and to fight. Hello? Earth's to Lily? Mary's voice crackles over the line. Lily shakes herself awake. Hi, sorry, home is fine. Mary makes a skeptical, scoffing noise. Sister being a nightmare, then? Oh, Jesus, Mary, don't make me muzzle you, Marlene hisses. Promises, promises. Lily laughs, her free hand coming to her mouth to try and catch it. Laughter is an odd sound in this house without her father. It's not that they're unhappy. Not exactly, or Lily isn't. She's not so sure about her mom and sister. It is your sister, though, isn't it? Mary pushes on. Never one to demur. Yeah, Lily says. Full bridezilla? She snorts. You could certainly say that. Have you got her bridesmaid's dress yet? Marlene asks. Yes, this time more grudgingly. Oh no. Lily can already hear Mary laughing. Just how horrible was it? Well, it's Dusty Rose. No! Lily has to pull the phone away from her ear. No, it isn't. She wouldn't. Oh, and with your hair pink, Lily? Yup, she says flatly, with sleeves the size of my head and ruffles as far as the eye can see. Mary starts making fake retching noises in the background. Lily's only a bridesmaid in the first place because their mother made Petunia include her. While Lily appreciates the gesture, she really, really wishes she hadn't. It's been nothing but a misery. And besides, Lily would rather just sit anonymously in the crowd, ignored, invisible. Or not go at all. Anyway, she says eventually, how are you two? I expect you didn't call just to gag over my sister's wedding. Mary snorts. No, we most certainly did not. We're calling to inform you of the party you'll be attending on Friday. She means we called to ask you. Asking implies a choice. There's no choice here. Who's going to be there? Lily interrupts their bickering before they can really get on a roll. There's a pause, which means that Marlene and Mary are doing that thing where they talk with their eyes. Why? Mary says eventually, voice teasing. Who do you want to be there? Lily rolls her eyes. No one. Uh-huh. Okay. Marlene, who is going to be there? There was ruffled and muffled voices until eventually Marlene comes through, crisper and louder than before. Clearly, she won the battle for the phone. Sorry, Lily, the whole Quidditch team. Ooh, Alice and Frank too? I haven't seen them in ages. I know, right? Marlene agrees. Our training is a bitch, but yeah, they said they'd be there. Dorcas too, Lucy and Tanner from herbology. Oh, and that Pratt Diggory, because Mary has decided she wants to shag him. Lily wrinkles her nose. Ew, Diggory? Why? Tell me about it. She said it has something to do with his... Okay, Mary interrupts. Why don't you just cut to the chase and tell her about the people she really cares about, huh? There aren't people I really care about, Lily insists, though she has a feeling it's a losing battle. Marlene sighs. James, Remus, and Peter are coming too. There may be, possibly, potentially, a theoretical situation that one could think up, a small skip in her pulse. But Lily doesn't let herself consider it, and she certainly doesn't intend to admit it to Mary, who for some reason has decided that now that her and James don't hate each other, they're suddenly going to fall in love. No serious? She asks. Mary sighs. I invited him, but things are apparently still tense between that lot. James said he didn't have a problem with him coming, but Sirius seems to think it'll be awkward. Did you ask Remus? Remus? Why? Well, it's him and Sirius who are fighting, I think, Lily says. James and Peter have just taken Remus's side. What? How do you know that? Marlene interjects. Lily shrugs, even though they can't see her. James told me. Well, basically told me anyway. Oh, he did he? Lily can practically hear her eyebrows waggling on the other end of the phone. Down, girl. I'm just saying, you two would make a hot couple. Ah, well, with that sound logic. Sorry, but what did you do? Serious, I mean? Marlene cuts in again. I spent, all of the end of the year trying to figure out what could have happened. I mean, for James to turn on Sirius? She lets out a low whistle. Those two are I don't know,
Brothers? Mary supplies. Not that Sirius has a terribly good luck with those, does he? Wow. Sorry, that got me. There's a beat of shocked silence before Lily hisses. Wow, Mary, that was particularly mean, even for you. Please tell me you didn't say that to him while you talked. Mary huffs. You two have no faith in me. Of course I didn't. But it doesn't mean I'm not right. Neither of them want to touch that. I don't know what he did, Lily says instead. James didn't say. Neither did Remus. Damn, Marlene sighs. I mean, obviously it's their business and everything, but I want to know too, Lily admits guiltily. Mary makes a scoffing noise. Honestly, you two, I know what happened. There's a pause, Lily sitting bolt upright in her chair. What do you mean you know? She demands. Yeah, what the hell, McDonald? Lily can't see her, but she can just picture Mary, reclining slightly, a smug look on her face while she shrugs off their indignation. Sorry, it slipped my mind, smile pulling at her mouth. Like you said, it's their business. Another pause. But you're going to tell us, right? Marlene prods. Mary makes a little humph noise. I could, I suppose. For a solid 5 seconds, Lily truly does think about murdering her. You don't really know, Marlene says finally, sounding as though she's been debating with herself. If you did, half the school would have heard by now. Ow, ow, don't start fighting with me, McDonald. I have seeker's reflexes. Didn't manage to dodge that hit. I wasn't ready. I see. So you have the seeker's reflexes as long as someone notifies you in advance, then? Marlene mumbles something under her breath that Lily can't quite make out, but she doubts is family-friendly. Mary, she says pointedly, do you know or not? I have a theory. That is not the same, Marlene shouts indignantly. Oh, well, sue me. It's more than either of you have. Go on, then, Lily says, still intrigued. What's your theory? Simple, Mary says, which Lily doesn't think is a promising start, because whatever is going on between those boys, it certainly doesn't seem simple. Sirius made a move on Remus. Lily's brain is so unprepared for that for a second, it doesn't process it. Made Remus move what? Moved what on Remus? Moved Remus where? Her brain cycles through every combination of those words and their possible meanings before finally landing on what, of course, Mary is saying. Oh. It seems Marlene is similarly stunned because she doesn't have much more to add. I expect the other 3 lads freaked out on him, stopped feeling comfortable sharing a room with him, changing in front of him. No, Marlene says finally. No, they wouldn't do that. Boys are assholes about that kind of thing, Mary goes on, undeterred. You saw how they got at Christmas with Spin the Bottle. Lily grimaces. She did, in fact, see that. McGonagall would never agree to kick him out of the dorm or off the Quidditch team for that. No way. Mary scoffs. Why? Because she's so progressive? And besides, anyone else notice that they moved him into a single room? Awfully strange. Punishment, don't you think? Unless the whole point was to keep him away from other boys? Stop it, Lily hears herself say. I'm not agreeing with it, Mary says defensively. I think it's horrid. I love Sirius. You know I do. I just also think it makes sense. After a small pause. People are horrid. James would never let that happen, Marlene says finally, new conviction in her voice. I told you, blokes are, I don't know, they're more sensitive about that sort of thing. No, Marlene says firmly, not James. I agree with Marlene, Lily pipes up, feeling slightly dazed by the whole situation. God, I forgot I was talking to James Potter's bloody fan club. Look, ladies, I'm sorry to break it to you, but he's a pig-headed jock who just like the rest of them. Lily's shaking her head even before she speaks. No, not about Sirius. He'd die for him. She doesn't know why she says it, but she knows it's true. The way he was talking, I don't think this could be it. I don't think Remus would react that way either. Besides, you're forgetting about Severus. Oh, yeah. What does Snape have to do with this? Mary asks, and Lily can hear the distaste in her voice. You remember, Mary, Marlene answers for her. He was in the infirmary, and then he had detentions with Sirius for the rest of the year. Oh, God, I keep forgetting about him. What a weird situation. Could be unrelated. Lily snorts. That'd be quite the coincidence. What even makes you think Sirius would be interested in Remus that way? Bit out of left field, that. There's a pause. Too long, really. And Lily finds herself suddenly frustrated with the phone because she really wants to see what Mary's face is doing right now. He told me, she says eventually. He told you? Marlene asks. What? Really? Lily didn't see that coming. Another pause. Well, I mean, not exactly. He just sort of said his name once.
while we were hooking up. Lily's eyes get so wide, she's afraid they're going to fall right out of her head. Oh my God, she hears herself say. Oh my God, Marlene repeats on the other end of the line. You two are so dramatic. Mary uses her most I'm more worldly than you tone. Is that why you two stopped seeing each other? Lily can hear the shrug in her voice. Not exactly, but it certainly made things a bit awkward from then on. So I told him I was interested in Connor Davies and that he wouldn't have to feel bad about it. Wow, Lily says. That was very decent of you, Mary. Some might even say nice, Marlene adds. Mary sniffs. I can be nice. Yeah, of course you can, Marlene says, sounding like she's holding in a laugh. I still don't think that's what caused the Marauders to break up, Marlene finishes for her. Yeah. Lily runs a hand through her hair, turning toward the window. She can see Remus that day in the courtyard. Sad look in his eyes, the way he was avoiding everyone. Mary's theory just doesn't feel right somehow. Well, you two can believe whatever you like. Now, back to the party. We're thinking big here, Evans. An epic end-of-summer bash. Marlene makes a whining noise. No, don't say that. It's not the end of summer yet. Come on now, darling. Everything good must come to a close. Lily watches as the cars drive along the street, sun bright outside. This summer truly has been beautiful. If only it had been filled with less wedding madness, she might have actually enjoyed it. No way, you're not allowed to make the punch again. Marlene's voice drifts through Lily's daydreaming. And why not? Because last time you nearly killed Dorcas. Lily used to love summer, but then she supposes most kids do. Those days where all you do is run around outside until the sun sets, coming back dirty and tired with scuffed knees and stories to tell. She used to go monster hunting with Severus and then come back and tell her father all about it. He loved that stuff. Once he made a book about it, all the monsters they'd caught. Lily still has it somewhere. Lily, do you think you could pick that stuff up? When she first sees him, she thinks she's making it up. She'd just been thinking about him after all. Maybe it's a trick of the light, of her memories. Lily! But no, she blinks, wiping a hand across her eyes, and he's still there. Not a little kid anymore, of course, not as interested in hunting monsters as joining them. Sorry, she hears herself say distantly into the receiver. I have to go. She hangs the phone up, getting out of her chair and walking toward the window. He's standing across the street, hair longer than it was the last time she saw him. He always looks younger in muggle clothes. Softer. He looks like he's still mine, her traitorous mind supplies. She hasn't seen him all summer. She thought they'd come to some sort of agreement. Mom, she calls as she shoves on her shoes. I'm heading out. Don't forget to buy my... She slams the door shut on her sister's voice, watching the boy across the street stand up straighter as she walks toward him, hands already shaking. She stops a few feet away on the pavement. Can I help you? He winces, looking down so his hair falls forward, nearly swallowing him completely. I was hoping we could... talk. It's harder here, in the place where they met, where they grew up together, away from castles and magic and other people. It's harder to hate him. You were hoping we could talk, she replies coldly. About what, exactly? His eyes dart up off the pavement to meet hers, but only for a moment. Lily, not mudblood? She interrupts. Why so formal all of a sudden, Severus? Or, I suppose now that no one's around, it's all right for me to have a name? She can already feel tears trying to weasel their way up her throat, but she has no intention of crying. Not again. Not over this. She's tired, and it's pointless. Severus's next exhale punches out of him like he's just been hit. I'm sorry. I told you. I didn't mean to say it. I was just vulnerable. She cuts him off. I understand how it happened, Sev, but it came to you so fucking easily, so quickly, like it didn't matter. There's a catch in her voice that she tries and fails to clear. Tell me, if it had been Mary standing there instead of me, would you have still come slinking up to the Gryffindor common room to apologize? It never would have been McDonald. Lily lets out a frustrated growl. That's not the point, Sev. Do you know why it never would have been her? He goes on, not getting it, on his war path like always. You know, there had been a time where he had been an incredible listener, but these days he feels like she feels like he barely ever hears her. Because she's one of their bloody groupies. Oh my God! She throws her arms up in frustration. This is so much more important than your petty bullshit with the Marauders. This is all about them, and you used to be able to see it. He lifted his head now, hair falling away from his eyes as they lock onto hers. See what, Severus? What a bunch of privileged, narcissistic assholes they are. It would have made you furious what Potter did. It did, she yells, loud enough that he takes a step back. She's sure she's going to be getting complaints from the neighbors in a few minutes, but she can't bring herself to care. I stood up for you. I held my wand to his head, and you called me a mudblood. Her chest is heaving. Years, Sev. Years I spent defending you to everyone, and then in front of the entire school, you showed them what an absolute fucking idiot I've been. Lily, to think that you were different. Lily, please. To believe that you were my friend, that you cared about me. I do care about you, he says desperately. And he sounds like he means it. Really, he does. The expression he usually wears around school, that empty mask, it disappears when they're together. She used to think this was the real him, the person he was with her. Now, she's not so sure. The thing is, Severus, you don't care about me. God, it hurts, like pouring salt in an open wound. You care about you. He opens and closes his mouth, like he can't figure out what to say. She doesn't blame him. I mean, what's left at this point? We just keep going in circles, she says eventually. So just go away, okay? We've dragged this out far enough. She doesn't wait for him to respond, turning on her heel and starting back toward the house. Lily, oh, come on, Lily, please, I'm trying here. Trying? She demands, stopping on her doorstep. Trying to what? What are you even doing here, Sev? Surely this makes you sick. She gestures to the building behind her. Me and my muggle home and my muggle mom and my muggle sister. Surely it all disgusts you. You know it doesn't. How? She tries to keep her volume in check. They're too close to the house now, and the last thing she needs is her mother or sister coming out to see what's going on. How would I know that? You do realize that it's not just that your friends don't like me, right? They want me dead, Sev. Saying it out loud makes a slightly hysterical laugh come out of her, because it's all so absurd, all so terrible. Nothing is going to happen to you. He steps forward now, trying to close the space between them, which is the last thing she needs. I'll keep you safe. I'll protect you, always. Always, Lily. There's something heartbreaking about it all. The swelling is in his eyes, the sincerity, the way he reaches his hand out. She doesn't know how they got here, but she can't help but feel it was all supposed to be different, that they were supposed to grow old together. She blames him for that, for breaking them, because for a while, they really were something special. To what end, Sev? Until I'm the last mudblood on the planet? Stop using that word, he hisses. I'll use it if I fucking want to, she snaps back. You can't protect me, and if you really believe in all of this, in the Death Eaters and the violence and the great chain of magical beings, then I can't figure out why you'd even want to. He used to be shorter than her, but he's not anymore. She always forgets that until moments like this, when all of a sudden she realizes he's looking down at her, taking up too much space in her chest. I want to, he says, voice suddenly quiet, causing goosebumps to pebble her skin. Because I love you. It's a reflex, really. She's barely thinking when she pulls her arm back and punches him right in the stomach. He doubles over immediately, clutching at his middle like he's afraid he's going to split in half. Fuck you, her voice shakes. Stay the hell away from me. He looks like he's about to say something, but she's not interested, slamming the door shut behind her and running up the stairs with her shoes still on. She can hear her mother and sister calling after her, but she doesn't answer, doesn't turn around, shutting the door to her bedroom and collapsing against it. And oh, hello. Here they are. Tears stream down her face as she chokes into her hand, trying not to make too much noise. Somehow, she ends up on the ground, knees pulled into her chest, forehead resting on top of them. They've done this so many times by now, her and Sev. She doesn't know why it still feels like this, like cutting something out of herself. I love you. How dare he? How fucking dare he after everything, after years? I love you. She lifts her head like that'll help her breathe, sobs taking up all the space in her chest, leaving no room for air. I love you. It hurts because he does, because she wants him to. because she waited so long to hear him say it. So many nights when they got quiet and their hands got close and their noses almost touched. It hurts because it's part of the reason she held on to him for so long. Held on to this because she knew deep down everything she felt. Everything he felt. It hurts because she understands now that it isn't enough. Loving someone. It doesn't save you. Not in the end. Petunia's hen-do is about as awful as one would expect. Pink and white decorations are strewn about the living room, which slowly fills with women who are on ridiculous diets and therefore do not eat fancy cheeses and baguettes. Fine, Lily thinks. More for me. Admittedly, the cheese does help make her a little less miserable. Well, the cheese and the wine. You know, a girl with garish shade of orange lipstick says to her on one of her many trips to the food table, I didn't even know Petunia had a sister. Isn't that funny? Lily looks at her flatly. Hilarious. Baguette? The woman looks a little startled. Oh, no, I'm not eating carbs. Lily isn't sure if she smiles or grimaces. She sits in the corner with her plate of food and watches her sister make small talk and receive gifts and play games like purse scavenger hunt and pin the veil on the bride, some sort of soft melodic music playing in the background. Lily has always been under the impression that hen-dos were meant to be a bit more wild than this, but then, she supposes, she isn't surprised. Petunia doesn't do wild. Not anymore. She is tight and ordered and stiff. Their grandmother, before she passed, had a case of little porcelain figurines, beautiful cherub-looking things. Some days, Lily thinks that's Petunia's aspiration in life, to be a porcelain figure in a glass case. Lily, Petunia hovers over her chair. The heels she insisted Lily wear, even though they are in their own house, have been left in a heap on the carpet, her legs tucked under her skirt. Refill the refreshments, please. Lily's brow arches. After all, she's the only one who's been eating the refreshments. She can't really see the point in... Now, Petunia hisses before floating away. Rolling her eyes, Lily heads towards the kitchen to get the rest of the food, maneuvering her way through the sea of women who are all dressed up far too much to just be puttering around their living room. Selfish. Spends all her time at that posh boarding school. Barely ever comes home. Petunia has to manage everything. The sound of voices causes Lily to stop in the hallway, hidden from the people talking in the kitchen. How can they even afford it? I mean, I was under the impression that their mother hasn't much money. They can't. But apparently, it's like she won't hear of going anywhere else. Like I said, selfish. Did you know she didn't even come home for their father's funeral? Lily takes a step back, feeling as though she's just been hit, her face burning. The two women are still talking, but she can't hear anything, the buzzing in her ears growing too loud. It's not until someone laughs somewhere behind that she starts moving again. She needs to get out of here. She needs to breathe. Without thinking, she pushes her way through the house, sliding out the back door and into the garden. The fresh air feels good on her hot skin, pulse going a mile a minute as she presses her back against the house and inhales, eyes falling closed. She'd have only been 12 when her father died. She would have come home. She would have been here, if she could have been. But it had happened so suddenly. A car accident. No warning, no preparation, and there are no telephones at Hogwarts. If her mother was a witch, she could have used the flu, but of course, she isn't. Lily hadn't had an owl then because her mother didn't know where they would keep it during the summer, and honestly, they couldn't afford it, which meant that the only way to contact her was through the Muggle post. Letters addressed to Hogwarts do make it there, but it takes time. More time than an owl. So by the time Lily found out about her father's death, by the time all the arrangements were made for her to flew her mom, to speak with her, a week had passed. Her father was buried. The funeral over. Even now, Lily feels the ache of that pain cut through her. How fucking devastated she had been. How lonely. Sometimes being a Muggle-born feels like floating. With no anchor, no port. She belongs nowhere. In the magic world, she's a person without a history. Magical families have legacies and friendships that stretch back millennia. They know who their great-great-great-great-grandfathers were. Sometimes they've even spoken to them if they have portraits. Lily has none of that. No link to the magical world, no familiar faces. She's on her own. In the Muggle world, she finds it hard to relate to people. There's a whole part of reality that they know nothing about, a whole part of her that they know nothing about, and she's never sure how to bridge that gap. She startles at the sound of the screen door opening, looking over to find her sister stepping out into the yard. Petunia walks forward, not seeing Lily yet, and takes a deep breath, letting her face tilt toward the sky on the exhale. After a few seconds, she reaches in her pocket of her skirt and pulls out a packet of cigarettes. "And after all the shit you've been giving me for smoking," Lily says, voice sounding loud in the quiet. Petunia whips around, eyes narrowing as she picks Lily out of the dark. "What are you doing here?" "What are you doing out here?" Lily repeats petulantly. Even in the dark, she can see her sister roll her eyes. "Whatever." Petunia turns back around, looking out over the garden as she brings a cigarette to her mouth. The burning tip, the brightest thing in the yard. Lily knows the smart thing for her to do would be to go inside. Nothing good ever comes from the two of them being left alone together. But she's had just enough wine to feel reckless. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" her sister asks, without turning around. "This." Lily gestures at the house, at the dismal party going on inside. "Getting married. You're barely out of school. You have so much time. And Vernon, I'd be careful if I were you." There's a danger in her tone. "He's not a match for you," Lily says anyway. Petunia actually laughs at that, tilting her head back and blowing smoke up to the sky, catching the moonlight. "No," she says finally. "He isn't." Well, Lily thinks, at least we can agree on that. Does he just look right then? Is that it? Very domestic, very proper, straight-laced. Something like that. Behind them, the noise of the party drips closer. Someone's starting to play ABBA. There's a sound of laughing, the buzz of polite conversation. Dad would hate him, which is the wrong thing to say on every level. But the wine is still thrumming through her, and so is the pain from the conversation she heard in the kitchen. Petunia finally turns around. "Don't you talk to me about Dad." "I'll talk about whatever I want." "You weren't here. That's not my fault." Lily steps forward now, off the wall, into her sister's space, trying to restrain her childish desire to kick and scream and throw a temper tantrum. "Not my fault, not my fault, not my fault." "It is your fault." Petunia jabs her cigarette at her. "You chose that school." Lily blinks, slightly taken off guard. "What?" "You could have stayed here. You could have stayed with us, but you went to go off and leave us behind, so you weren't here. Not when the police showed up, not when we had to identify the body, not when we buried him." Chills run up Lily's spine, and she does her best not to flinch. "I was the only one who had to plan the funeral." "You had Mom!" Lily interrupts, finding her voice. "I had no one. I was alone." "Ha!" Petunia laughs cruelly. "Mom was nearly bloody catatonic. I had to force her to get out of bed, to eat, to shower. I started sleeping in her room because I was afraid to leave her alone, afraid she was going to..." But her voice cuts out, and Lily can see her hand shaking as she takes another drag from her cigarette, turning away again. Lily doesn't know what to do with any of this, her chest a storm of feelings she can't work through. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispers finally. Petunia sends her a sharp look, eyes bright under the stars. "You weren't here." Another pause, and then, "So yes, Vernon is boring and predictable, but at least I will always know where he is and when he's coming home, and I won't have to worry about him running off places I can't follow or getting drunk and trying to fucking drive himself home." Her voice breaks, and Lily feels her chest grow tight, feels herself struggle to breathe. They never talk about that part. The part where their father was twice over the legal limit. The part where it was his fault. "So maybe Dad would have hated him," Petunia goes on eventually, throwing her cigarette on the ground and turning back toward the house. "But to be perfectly honest, I couldn't care less about that man's opinion." The pain in her voice makes the words difficult to believe. Her eyes meet Lily's, running her up and down, a familiar look of disgust on her face. "You're just like him, you know." And with that, she goes back inside. Mary calls the next day, asking Lily to pick up some last-minute things for the party, and she can't say yes fast enough. Anything to get out of the house. Anything to get away from her sister. Technically, she doesn't need to go to Diagon Alley to get these things Mary asked for, but the truth is, she misses magic. Desperately. So she takes the train into London and then walks into the leaky cauldron, getting butterflies in her stomach as the familiar brick wall dissolves in front of her, revealing the bustling wizarding street on the other side. She feels instantly as though a weight has been lifted off of her. Her eyes bounce everywhere, sucking all of it in, feeling her own magic humming below her skin, desperate to get free. Mary says she can never decide which she likes better, the Muggle world or the Wizarding one. Lily doesn't have that problem. For all of its faults, she loves magic, loves it to bits. She gets some sweets for tomorrow, even though she can already see Mary rolling her eyes. "We're not 6, Lily," she'll say. Personally, Lily takes great offense at the idea that only 6-year-olds are allowed to get excited about candy. She also gets butterbeer and ice cream from Florian's, that's just for her, and is debating going into the bookshop when she hears her name called out behind her. "Lily Evans, as I live and breathe." Sirius Black is sauntering toward her through the crowd, leather jacket over his tight black t-shirt and jeans. She smiles because it feels so right. Like, yes, of course this is how he dresses outside of school. "Fancy seeing you here." He gives her a one-armed hug that she can only lean into because of the aforementioned bags and ice cream. "Ah," he says, scanning the display window she'd been admiring. "Last-minute school shopping?" She shakes her head. "Actually, I was thinking of just going in for fun." "Course you were." He shakes his head. "Wasting your last few precious days of freedom reading. It doesn't surprise me at all." Lily rolls her eyes. "Oh, please, you're basically top of our year, so you'll have to excuse me if I don't buy the whole reading is lame routine." Sirius shoots her a wolfish grin. "You got me." He leans his head a little closer to hers. "Don't tell anyone, though, okay? I've got a reputation to uphold." "Scout's honor." His eyebrows draw together in confusion. "Scouts?" Lily smiles a little. "Never mind. Muggle thing." "Huh." He nods thoughtfully before his eyes drop down to the bags in her hands. "What do you got there?" It takes Lily a minute to answer because she's just shoved the rest of her ice cream cone in her mouth. "Party supplies," says, mouth still partially full. Sirius gives her a bemused sort of smile. "You know, you're adorable when you're being gross." She swallows before letting out a laugh, the back of her hand coming to her mouth, trying to hold some of it back. That might be my favorite compliment. Or insult? I'm not really sure, honestly. "Compliment," he confirms. "Definitely a compliment. So you're throwing a party then?" "What? Oh, no. She holds up the bags. "These are for Mary's thing tomorrow." "Ah." She sees just the slightest dimming of his eyes and feels her heart give a pull. "She said you didn't think you should come?" Sirius shrugs in an overly casual gesture, hands shoving themselves in his pockets. "Well, you know." He looks back at the shop window. "Things are still tense between you lot then? I would have thought, what with you living at James's house." Sirius lets out a breath of laughter. "Yes, that has been a little tricky." He pauses, and then, "Things with James are actually all right, I think." His face scrunches up like he's trying to work out something complicated. "We're not fighting anymore, but we're not normal." "That's why you're here alone." "Yep." He smiles dryly. "Thus why I'm here alone." There's a pause. Sirius still looking very resolutely at the book display and Lily looking at him. "If you and James are better," she settles on eventually, "then I can't imagine he would mind you coming to the party." Sirius grimaces. "It's not him I'm worried about." "Ah," she says knowingly, trying not to think about what Mary said the other day, because really, she shouldn't know any of it anyway, and besides, she doesn't believe it. Doesn't believe Remus would cut him off just for... That's where they are now, Sirius goes on, and she doesn't. Lily gets the sense that he hasn't had many people to talk to this summer. Remus says, "You know, I've never been to his house before. Best mates 5 years, and I've never been to his house. James has. I mean, now he's been loads, but even before. It didn't really bother me then, but now I think it's because Remus always knew, deep down." "Knew what?" Lily asks, voice gentle. "That he couldn't trust me." It hurts, the way he says it. So strange to see Sirius Black anything but cocky and carefree. She finds herself reaching out and squeezing his arm. "I don't believe that." It's not a casual thing for him, having people at his house, meeting his parents. He guards those parts of himself, keeps them safe, shares them with the people he believes in most. He shrugs. "I guess I was just never one of them. He's always been a great judge of character, our Mooney." "Sirius." She ducks her head, trying to get him to meet her eye again. Eventually it works.
People don't get upset, don't get hurt by just having their suspicions confirmed. He did trust you, and maybe whatever you did broke that. But broken things can be fixed. He looks about as earnest as she's ever seen him. Not all of them. She thinks of Petunia, standing in the garden at night, her voice breaking. You weren't here. It is your fault. Lily shakes her head, trying to shut those thoughts off. Come to the party, she says suddenly. Sirius looks down at her skeptically, but Lily doubles down. Come to the party, Sirius. You know, you do have other friends besides those three. And that finally brings the light back to his face. Not so long ago, you would have stuck a nail in your eye before admitting being my friend. Pfft, she scoffs. You're being dramatic. He gives her a pointed look. Oh, all right. Maybe in first and second year. The look continues. And third year, she concedes eventually. But you were definitely growing on me by fourth year. Sirius laughs. I am an acquired taste. Like caviar. He taps the tip of his nose like they're in cahoots. Like caviar. She smiles. Come to the party, Sirius, she says for the third time. You'll all have to be together in a week when we go back to school anyway. He continues to look unconvinced. I'll think about it. Thinking doesn't strike me as one of your strong suits. He laughs, big and barking. Oh, you have no idea. The sun has started getting heavier in the sky, hanging low and threatening to sink below the horizon. The crowds in the streets have thinned, but only slightly. It's summer, so it's never completely empty, people sitting outside on patios and inside at candlelit tables. Hey. Sirius jabs her with his elbow. You got any plans tonight, Evans? Jesus, do you sharpen your elbows or something? She asks, rubbing her side. And no, not really. Why? Let's get dinner. The leaky. My treat. She lets out a huff of laughter. You asking me on a date, Black? Gingers aren't really my type. Oi! First off, he says, while annoyingly dodging her fist, I share a dorm room with 3 marauders. If you want to hit me, you're going to have to be faster than that. She glares at him. Secondly, are you saying you want to be my type? He raises his eyebrows at her suggestively. Ew, no. He laughs, swinging his arm around her shoulders. Glad we're on the same page, Freckles. Now, come on, let me buy you some dinner. I'm rich now, did you know? Just now, she says, allowing herself to be dragged down the street. I thought you were always rich. I thought being rich was like 85% of your personality. Nah, my family was rich. But now I, personally, Sirius Black III, am rich. The third? Really? There are 3 of you? Well, not currently. She snorts. In that case, I hope you know I'm getting the most expensive thing on the menu. Sirius grins. I'd expect nothing less. The next day, Lily gets to Mary's house early to help set up. They mix drinks and listen to music and get dressed. Getting ready is honestly Lily's favorite part of going out. She likes the ritual of it, the easiness. Just the 3 of them giggling and dancing like goofs, not trying to impress anyone. Well, well, look at you, Lily says as Mary walks out of the bathroom in a mini dress that on anyone else would be trying too hard, but on Mary is absolutely divine. Thank you, thank you. She gives a little bow. Ow, ow! Marlene whistles as she walks in with a punch bowl, setting it down on the table they've set up in the living room. Mary's parents are on vacation with their little brother, so they have the place to themselves. The one downside being that there's no flu, so everyone will have to get there the Muggle way. All except for Alice and Frank, who can operate. Lily flips the record, turning the volume up. God, I love this song. You say that about every song, Mary quips, earning her a rude hand gesture from Lily that makes Marlene laugh. It's not long before there's a loud crack in the front hall, and then, Who's ready to party, bitches? I think Alice might be here, Marlene says dryly, as the short, dark-haired girl bursts into the living room, a bottle in each hand. What an entrance, Pruitt! Mary pulls the older girl into a hug as Frank rounds the corner significantly more quietly. Hey, Captain. Marlene grins. Not anymore, I'm not. He laughs, rubbing the back of his neck. Alice moves on to hug Marlene, dropping her bottles off on the table before making her way to Lily. Hey, babes. She pulls her into a quick embrace. Haven't seen you in ages. You've been busy. Alice lets out something between a laugh and a groan. Haven't I ever? Lily opens her mouth to ask more, but Mary's voice cuts across the room, eyes on Frank. So, who did get the badge of honor in the end, since I noticed you made the grave mistake of not naming me as your successor? Mary's leaning against a wall, hip-cocked, eyes glittering in that way they do where you can't tell if she's flirting with you or threatening you.
That'll be Potter.
Marlene groans. I bloody knew it. He's going to be insufferable. Insufferable? He's going to be a monster. Watch, I bet the little Quidditch freak makes us start practice at like 5 a.m, Mary says disdainfully.
You guys aren't giving him enough credit.
Frank, ever the earnest one.
I think he'll do a really good job of it, honestly.
Mary rolls her eyes. Please, that's just because you're in love with him.
I'm in love with Alice. Thank you very much.
Yes, dear, but you do get a bit of a glazed look in your eyes when you watch James fly. Alice sing-songs, causing Frank to let out a series of mortified choking noises.
They do not.
Lily really does try not to laugh, but he just looks so precious, blushing and spluttering. Alice links her arm through Lily's, pulling her in close as though the whole room can't still hear what she's saying. He thinks I don't know about his little crushes, but I do.
Oh my God.
Frank passes a hand over his flushed face.
I need a drink.
Right here, Frankie boy, Marlene grins from the table, lifting up her own cup. What do you want?
Something strong.
That'll be Mary's punch, then. Frank makes a slightly queasy expression.
Maybe not that strong.
Aw, big tough R can't handle a little punch, Mary says in a baby voice. The teasing does not appear to faze Frank, who starts pouring himself a glass of fire whiskey and apple juice.
Not if you've had anything to do with it.
Alice and Lily meander over to the others, getting their own drinks. Ooh, we should toast. Mary holds up her cup. Lily arches her brow. Should we? At nearly the exact same time that Marlene asks, to what? I don't know. To us. To us, Marlene repeats. Not a very inspiring toast, Mary. I still don't understand why we're toasting at all. Mary rolls her eyes at the both of them while Alice snickers. Fine, to be young and beautiful and to me hooking up with Amos Diggory tonight. Marlene makes a retching noise. Yeah, Lily agrees, wrinkling her nose. I'm not toasting to that.
I am also not toasting to that, Frank pipes up, looking thoroughly disturbed.
Oh, Jesus, you are so high maintenance. She shakes out her shoulders and tries again. To winning the Quidditch Cup this year. Hear, hear! Frank and Marlene immediately raise their glasses, and with such enthusiasm that some of their drinks rained down on the table. Better than Amos Diggory, I guess. Lily tries to hide her smile as Marlene's affronted look, all of them clinking their glasses together. People started arriving quickly after that, Mary's house filling up with a surprising number of strangers. Lily had assumed that she would know most of the people coming out, but she seems to have miscalculated Mary's popularity. A rookie move. The woman in question is nowhere to be found. She had been draping herself over Amos's lap on the sofa not 10 minutes ago, but now Lily can't find the couple anywhere. Not that she's really looking. That's one thing she absolutely does not need to walk in on. It's hot. Too hot, really, even with all the windows and doors open. Lily sticks mostly to the wall, and something about standing in the open always makes her feel awkward. Suddenly she'll forget what she's supposed to do with her arms and legs. At least when there's a wall, she has a prop to work with.
We have got to stop meeting like this.
Lily turns to find Sirius leaning next to her. His hair is pulled back tonight, likely because of the heat. It ought to look ridiculous, but as with everything, it kind of suits him. You came, she says smugly.
Ah, well, after you practically begged me to.
Excuse me? She demands in mock indignation. I don't remember any begging. He cocks his eyebrow.
Really? I could have sworn there was begging. Then again, maybe that was the dream I had last night. Except in that, you weren't wearing any...
Oh my God, Sirius. She punches his arm, and this time he actually stands still. You are unbelievable, you know that? I thought gingers weren't your type. He laughs.
Depends on the day, really.
Incorrigible.
So I've been told.
She shakes her head, smiling despite herself as she looks back out at the party. She can see Remus and Peter now, standing on the other side of the room with Frank and some seventh-year boy Lily barely recognizes. She turns back to Sirius and finds him staring in the same direction. Have you talked to them? She asks. He shakes his head, not dropping his gaze. They know you're here?
I told James to check with Remus, see if it was okay.
Well, that's encouraging. She pauses, Sirius still looking at his friends. I'm assuming he didn't say no? Sirius lets out a dry laugh.
No, he didn't say no. But you've met him. He never would, even if you wanted to.
Lily isn't sure if that's actually true, but then she wonders if maybe it's just that Remus would never say no to Sirius. Are you going to talk to them? Sirius grimaces, finally turning back to her.
I don't think that'd be a good idea. Peter'd probably talk back, but he'd be stressed out the whole time.
And Remus?
He sighs. God, I don't know.
He's looking at him again, like he can't help it, and Lily feels her heart ache for him a little. He really does look heartbroken. Fuck, she thinks. Maybe Mary was right. She opens her mouth to speak, but before she can, the undeniable voice of Alice Pruitt cuts through the party. Sirius! They both turn to look as Alice hops up and down, trying to be seen over the tops of people's shoulders. Get your cute ass over here. Sirius grins. How gone is she? He asks. Give her a break. It's her first day off in months.
That oar training's really something, huh?
Who would have thought? Sirius!
Yes, darling, I'm coming,
he trills, attempting to forge a path through the crowd. He looks back at Lily over his shoulder.
Coming?
She waves him off. You go. I think I need to step out for the minute. Get some fresh air. He nods.
All right. I'll find you later, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Sirius is promptly swallowed by the wall of bodies in front of them, and when Lily's eyes trail back over to the other side of the room, she finds Remus watching him. Jesus, she thinks. What a mess. She does eventually manage to make it out to the backyard, sweat suddenly cold on her skin as the night air brushes against her. There's one or two people she doesn't know standing by the house, so she decides to venture further out into the garden. It's dark, but the stars are bright tonight, brighter than they've been all summer, so Lily doesn't mind. It's because of the lack of light that it takes her so long to notice him. James Potter, lying on the grass, looking up at the sky. She freezes for a moment, just staring at him, wondering if she should turn back. Surely she's had enough of the marauders for one night. But her traitorous feet don't start toward the house again. Instead, they make a beeline straight for him. Hey, she says lamely, and then nearly makes a U-turn right back around because what is she even doing? It's not like she has anything to say to him. James blinks up at her, eyes cloudy and a little bloodshot. Ah, she thinks, he's drunk. Did you fall or are you down on purpose? He snorts.
On purpose.
She nods, pausing for a moment before sitting down next to him, crossing her legs and looking up. She's always liked astronomy, even if it is a bit trickier than some of her other classes. There's something nice about the way it's always there, in the sky, no matter where you are. After a few seconds, James pushes himself up so he's sitting too, though he's a bit clumsy about it. How long have you been here, Potter?
Dunno. An hour, maybe?
She quirks her brow. Really been throwing them back, huh? He hums, eyes still in the sky.
Punch.
That checks out. You ought to know better than to touch Mary's punch. But he shakes his head. Nah, this is good. He closes his eyes for a minute.
This feels better. Even if the world is spinning a bit.
There's something sad in his voice that catches her off guard. Feels better than what?
I miss.
Wow, you really are drunk. His eyes blink open again.
Yeah.
They sit in silence, the party rumbling on behind them, and an indistinct mess of music and shouting. Lily wonders if she should leave him alone, but she can't quite seem to make herself move. Maybe she's drunker than she thought? Though, to be honest, she feels almost painfully sober right now. So who is it then? She decides to ask. He blinks, looking over at her.
What?
Who is it you're out here missing? He looks oddly panicked for a second.
I didn't say there was, right? I didn't say anyone. I didn't say there was anyone. Jesus.
He brings his fingers up and pinches the bridge of his nose. Lily gives him a minute, and then, no one gets this melancholy over something that doesn't have a heartbeat. He laughs at that.
Might be true, though you've never seen the way Sirius looks at his leather jacket.
Lily smiles. I can imagine. James sighs, looking back out at the sky. Lily waits for him to answer her question, but when he speaks, that's not what happened.
You see those stars?
He asks, pointing to a cluster just above her. Yeah?
That's...
He stops, swallows, starts again.
That's Ophiuchus. It's supposed to be a guy wrestling with a snake. I looked it up. I always look up the things he... Anyway, apparently he tried to warn the Trojans about the Trojan horse, so the gods sent a pair of sea serpents to punish him. Lily looks from James to the stars. Huh. Didn't realize you knew so much about Muggle myths. I don't. She waits for him to explain, but he doesn't. She keeps looking at the constellation. Ophiuchus, tilting her head to the side. It kind of looks like a turtle. And that gets a laugh out of him. A proper one. Probably bigger than it would have been if he was sober. Right? That's what I said, but he was all... James stops abruptly, coughing like that'll make it more natural. Lily looks over at him. He? Serious, you mean? Because this whole family is named after the stars, so if anyone's been teaching James Potter about the constellations, it makes sense it would be him. Sure. But James almost immediately pulls a face. Actually, no, definitely not. Too gross. Gross? Evans, what's with the questions, huh? I'm too drunk for questions. Lily holds her hands up in surrender. Hey, you're the one going on astronomy rants, not me. Yeah, well, again, he points at his face. Drunk. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. You're supposed to be the responsible one here. Stop me. Lily laughs. Stop you? Stop you what? Talking? Yes, please. She sits there for a moment, traitorous eye dropping to his mouth, which, no, ew, what? She quickly looks away, reaching to her back pocket and pulling out her cigarettes. She's going to have to quit after this summer. It wasn't a habit before now, just something she did on hard days, but then maybe there have been more hard days recently. She puts one between her fingers before offering the box to James. He looks skeptical. Didn't peg you for a smoker, Evans. So you do know what they are. He looks up, affronted. Of course I know what they are. Lily shrugs. It's hard to tell with wizards. I'm mildly offended by that. Good. He snorts, looking back down at the pack. You don't have to take one, you know, she says, watching him hesitate. Right. He rubs the back of his neck. Thing is, okay, I know what they are. I just don't quite know how they work. Lily does her best to stifle a laugh. God, and they think you're the bad one. Remus at least had some idea what he was doing. James's eyes flash up. Have you been corrupting my Moony? Your Moony. She arches her brow, trying to ignore the bit of her stomach that flutters at the adorableness of the statement. Did you think he belonged to someone else? James asks. I wasn't aware he belonged to anyone. Well, he looks down and, with a little trepidation, pulls a cigarette out of the pack. Now you know. Right. She bites down on a smile. And Peter? James nods. Also mine. I can't quite see the point in asking, but yes, serious too. Honestly, Evans, I thought you were supposed to be clever. Keep up. He snaps his fingers and Lily laughs. I guess I didn't realize you were quite so territorial. Clearly, you haven't been paying enough attention to me. Clearly, she repeats, amused. All right, put this, she holds up her cigarette, between your lips. I'm going to light the end, and you're going to inhale, okay? Inhale and hold it, right in your chest. James is looking at her like she's insane. You're going to light it while it's in my mouth? Yes. Looking very concerned, he does as she asked. Just know, he talks around the cigarette, that if you burn my face, I will sue you. What a posh threat. She holds her fingers beneath his smoke and snaps. It always gives her a bit of a thrill when that works. James's eyes widen slightly, but he inhales before he can speak and immediately starts coughing. Merlin's tits, he wheezes. Oh my God. Lily is laughing so hard she can't light her own cigarette. That's fucking awful. Tears are spilling out of the corners of his eyes. What the fuck, Evans? What the actual shite is this? His free hand clutches at his chest as he doubles over. It gets better, Lily finally manages, winded from her laughter. The first one's the hardest. Gets better? He wipes at his eyes with the back of his hand. I should fucking hope so. His face is bright red and wet, eyes all puffy, holding the cigarette away from his body like it's a bomb he's afraid is going to go off. Just try again. Lily is still struggling to keep her giggling under control. It'll be better this time? You promise? He gives the cigarette a sidelong look. Sure, yeah. You just have to breathe in deep into your chest. She points unhelpfully at her sternum. Yeah, I fucking breathed in, Evans. That's the goddamn problem. Shit. He spits on the grass next to him. Okay. I'm trying this once more, but I swear if it's not better, you'll sue me. I got it. Big deep breath, hold it, let it out. Uh-huh. He looks thoroughly unimpressed as he brings the cigarette back to his mouth and takes a tentative inhale. Instantly, he starts coughing again. Oh, fuck you, he sputters, now shoving the cigarette at her. Lily slips the unlit one behind her ear and takes James's. Evans, you dirty fucking liar. He has his hands on his knees, bracing himself as he tries to breathe through it, Lily cackling beside him. I can't believe you're so bad at this, though she sounds very pleased about it. Literally, how can you be good at it? It's like breathing fire into your lungs. He wipes his hand across his face, finally able to sit up straight again. Lily smiles as she brings a cigarette to her mouth and inhales, and then tilts her head back and blows rings up into the sky. What the hell? James yells, literally yells, jabbing an accusing finger at her. It's a spell. It has to be. But she shakes her head, still grinning. Nope, this is all muggle, my friend. He shakes his head, running a hand through the mess of his hair on his head. How? Practice? Why would you practice if it always feels like shit the first time? Lily shrugs. Looks cool, I guess. Ugh, fuck off. You sound like serious. And then, do not, I repeat, under any circumstances, show him these hell sticks. Hell sticks, Lily laughs. I'll never know peace again. He goes on, ignoring her. He'll start smoking them all the bloody time. I mean, they certainly do match his look. James fixes her with a pointed stare. Lily. Oh, okay, I won't. Cross my heart. She makes a motion with her hand. He shakes his head again, collapsing back into the grass. I never would have thought you'd be one to do it for the aesthetic, Evans. I'm not, she almost says. But honestly, she doesn't feel like having the dead dad conversation right now. Well, I've got to put in a little more effort now that I don't have someone following me around proposing to me every 5 minutes. James groans. First of all, I never proposed. Pretty sure you did. 3rd year, middle of magical creatures. That was a joke. Sure it was. She's glad it's so dark. Glad he can't see the blush that is, for some reason, making its way to the tops of her cheeks. Besides, I was never that interested in your looks anyway. Lily lets out a startled laugh. You really know how to make a girl feel special, Potter. What? And then she sees his eyes go wide. Oh, come on, that's not what I meant. You know that's not what I meant. She looks at him, brow raised. Do I? James rolls his eyes before propping himself on his elbows. You're beautiful. You know you're beautiful. The blush starts to burn, but Lily can't seem to break eye contact with him. But there are a lot of beautiful girls. Most girls, honestly. Lily snorts at that, and he shoots her a sheepish grin. I liked you because the first day we met, you put me in my place. He laughs a little, hand running over his face. You're a fucking force, Lily Evans, and you always have been. Trying to get your attention was like chasing after a storm. Terrifying and exhilarating and unbelievable every time. It's only when he stops that Lily realizes she's been holding her breath. Unsure of what to do with herself, she starts giving the cigarette in her hand a bit too much attention. Well, she says after her next exhale, when you put it like that. Sorry, I'm drunk. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this right. Lily quickly shakes her head. No, you are. Thank you. His face scrunches. Thank you? But all she can do is shrug. They lapse into silence again, Lily trying very hard to focus on the grass in front of her, fingers nervously flicking at the cigarette in her hand, while James looks up at the sky. I'm glad we're friends now, he says eventually, not dropping his eyes. I think it's better this way. Don't you? Something in the pit of her stomach violently disagrees, but she holds it down, smothering it. Yeah, she manages after a brief pause. Better as friends. Chapter end notes. Hello, the next chapter is all Regulus, I swear, but I always feel like the girls get a little neglected, and I had a fun time writing this chapter, so I hope you had a fun time reading it. Thank you for taking the time to read my little story. I appreciate it a ton. Your comments are always enjoyed.